podcast. We are back after our week hiatus, and we are here to react to the first round so far of the entire NBA playoffs. It's almost wrapped up, and it's kind of reminded everyone why the NBA kicks ass sometimes, especially in some of these games. And we're also going to go over the entire NFL draft. We're going to look at some of the teams who they picked, go over their grades, also talk about the entire drama with Shador Sanders and Bill Belichick going on. But you were here in the great state of Texas, the Lone Star State. Had a lot of good food, but we also watched a lot of the NBA playoffs, showed you all of our favorite beer gardens down here. But overall, I mean, NBA playoffs are back. What are your thoughts just kind of getting back into the groove of the NBA?
It feels so good because I feel like the NBA playoffs for a while were so boring because we knew it was going to be like the Warriors, Rockets, and Cavs for a long time. And then there was a period where there really wasn't like a super team. And now I feel like every team ultimately I feel like the West and the East are wide open now, where you have teams like the Thunder, but also a team like the Clippers, who are the fifth seed that could do well, the Warriors that could potentially make the finals. Feels like every series, any of these teams can really make a run in each of these playoff rounds. So it's been exciting. Plus, also, it's been a lot more physical. We've seen some players step up like we haven't seen before. We get to see the coming out party for Cade Cunningham. So it's been great, and I'm glad we got to go to Austin. Austin was great. Texas is phenomenal. San Antonio was gorgeous. So what a week to start off the NBA playoffs.
What a week to start it off. It really started like we were like kicking off the NBA playoffs our own. I mean, working hard. And then, I took you to San Antonio. I knew you'd see the Alamo and be like, oh, it's just a wall.
Yeah, I thought the Alamo was like, I don't know, more Texas esque, but the Alamo is just a fucking building. That's it. It's just a fucking beat up door. Like that's all it is. I don't know the history of the Alamo. I'm actually quite very ignorant to that, but I was expecting the Alamo to be like a giant statue or something way cooler than what it was. It's just a wall. That's all it is.
Yeah, no, it's an old broken down fort from a battle where everyone died. But also, like, why would you want to build a city around like a battlefield where you knew like thousands of people, tens of thousands of people died there, if not hundreds of thousands of people, and then you build around a battlefield for your city, and then you wonder why everywhere in San Antonio is haunted. Like they have like a lot of the hotels there are kind of haunted, or it kind of just has like a it's like a wholesome, but it kind of has like a haunted vibe when you're there, like of an old western town, and it feels like very 1800s, and some of like the architecture there almost feels medieval with some of the buildings.
It definitely doesn't feel like a traditional American's town. Like it feels like it's a European town almost with a lot of rich history. Like I liked it a lot. Like the Riverwalk, what I imagine Italy. I've never been to Italy, but I imagine Italy has something similar or something to that extent. And then the buildings are like they just feel very European in San Antonio. And then there is this kind of like gloomy, like kind of like how Berlin felt. I feel like San Antonio has a very like slim similarity to that, where there's like this like almost like this weird haunting aura around the city almost.
Yeah, and it was like cloudy when we went there, but like I feel like most of the times I've gone there, it's been kind of cloudy just because it's a little bit tropical there. But you did stop at Bucky's on the way there, so you finally got to do that after hearing about it, seeing it on your road trip down, and then as soon as you figured out what it was, no more Bucky's the rest of the road trip.
Bucky's is a great American treasure, but it's a treasure that we don't need to indulge too much on. Get your shirt, get your pulled pork sandwiches, and get on along your way.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's pretty chaotic in there. If you go like during the day on a weekend day, it feels like white trash Black Friday. It feels like when Lowe's had Black Friday deals there mixed with like Cumberland Farms. It's insane.
Yeah, yeah, it is cool though. I'm glad that there's one coming to Arizona, but Bucky's was cool. It's a good place on like a road trip. I feel.
Yeah, not a great place though to go is Oklahoma City if you're Memphis. Ja, you know, got hurt in the play-in tournament. Then he came back into the playoffs, got hurt again, and then the Thunder were like, you know what? We're hearing all this talk about us being a young team. How are they going to come out in the playoffs? And then they go out there with two of the most humiliating and demoralizing victories. And then they kind of just shut down Memphis. Memphis had some close games while they were there, and they kind of played with their pride, but they blew a 29-point lead. And Oklahoma City proved that, like, in the first round, they're not going to panic, even if they're going up against the Memphis Grizzlies. John Morant did go down, but they still came back from a 29-point lead. So I kind of learned with Memphis, like, or with Oklahoma City, sure, they might not be the most experienced team, but at least they showed some poise and some presence where some teams, maybe it's like, yeah, we'll win game 5 at home, but they had the discipline and kind of the killer will to just be like, no, let's just take care of this in 4. We don't need to risk Chet or SGA or Jalen Williams getting hurt. So I like when teams just go for it and close it out. It's what annoys me about the Celtics is sometimes they just play around and then they're in a 6-game series when it really should have been over in 4.
Yeah, and I feel like in this series, especially with the Thunder, like the Thunder, just the entire series have been extremely dominant. Like game one, they blow them out by 50. The following game, they blow them out by nearly 40. And then John Morant goes down. Looks like the Grizzlies might steal a game, and then the Grizzlies, they're just not going to compete with a team like the Thunder. They don't have the defensive players. They don't have the shooters. Really, like John Morant's the main focal point of that offense. Maybe you get something out of Jaren Jackson from time to time, but outside of when John Morant went down, their offense imploded. Thunder took advantage, and then ultimately they closed the deal. But Thunder proved to me that they are the real deal. Like if they will probably be in the Western Conference Finals pretty easily. I think the Thunder and Clippers series is going to be interesting, but by the time that they face the Thunder, both of those teams are going to be going through the gauntlet of the other team. So, do you think the Thunder is going to beat whoever they face this upcoming round and be a lock for the Western Conference Finals?
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting, and it'll definitely be a challenge in the next round. But I do think that the Clippers and Nuggets series is going to go 7, so you're going to get two very battle torn teams. But we're also kind of seeing, Jamal Murray and Kawhi Leonard kind of both round into form, where you had like Harden and Jokic carrying both of those teams through the regular season. But I think with the Thunder, like just watching them, what I got from them is just I felt overwhelmed watching the Thunder play from the perspective of the Memphis Grizzlies. When I was putting myself in the shoes of like the Grizzlies just playing that game, it's like you have all of these guys for the Thunder, and they do it in by committee in a way where you can't even tell where it's coming from. You just look up and suddenly you're down 15, 20 points. You have one guy getting a steal. You have like Caruso. You have Lou Dort coming off the bench. You have two Jalen Williams on your team. I mean, you have Hartenstein making plays. Suddenly, Chet is hitting a 3. Then you have SGA, and SGA didn't even have a good game in the first one, and they still just blew the doors off of Memphis, and they just play like defense, and they just feel like a coherent unit where it doesn't feel like they have like this ability where they're a super team, but it doesn't feel like one star dominated the game. It just felt like they were a force almost. Where with the Warriors, you felt it was Steph Curry. With LeBron and Miami, you felt it was very LeBron dominant. With the Thunder, this team does feel SGA heavy, but it also just kind of feels like a top to bottom, just defensive force where they're getting steals and just a force and barrage of threes and fast break points as well. And I feel like to beat this team, it's really going to just take a lot of poise, patience. And I feel like it's going to have to be a team like the Warriors with Jimmy Butler, where he can really just keep them in check and slow the game down. Because I feel like any team who tries to run and gun with the Thunder and outshoot them outside maybe Boston is going to lose that series.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The Thunder, they kind of remind me of the young Celtics back when they were first being constructed,
Mm.
before Tatum took his stride, before Jalen Brown took their stride. And you had the Gordon Haywards of the world, the Al Horfords, but then you also had like Jason Tatum could get 25 any night. Jalen Brown, you had Marcus Smart in the mix. Like the Thunder, obviously their star is SGA. He might be the MVP this year, but it feels like the entire team could all score 30 points any given night just based on who wants it, who gets it ultimately. I think this Thunder's team, the way that they were constructed, give credit to Sam Presti there, whether it was making the trade with Paul George or just hitting on your draft picks, developing them, getting the right coach in there, like credit to the Thunder. But yeah, when I watched them, it felt like we were watching honestly like college basketball team face off against a potential champion because the Grizzlies, I understand they're the eighth seed, but they felt so much more below the Thunder in this series. Like not even just like blowing their leads, losing John Morant. Like I just felt like the Thunder were such a significantly level higher than the Grizzlies, and it showed in the series. They dominated throughout it all.
Yeah, no, it felt like the varsity's team scrimmaging. Like it felt like the varsity team scrimmaging like the secondary unit on the team. It
Yeah.
felt like when the Christian school and their coach decides like, oh, let's challenge ourselves and play like a D3 or D2 public school when we're used to playing like homeschoolers and other small Catholic schools and they get absolutely demolished. Like that's exactly what it felt like. And then as far as the Grizzlies, don't want to bash anyone too much except for Jaren Jackson Jr. I mean, he feels like an all-star, feels like a promising player in the regular season sometimes, but I feel like in the playoffs, too many times I've seen him just disappear and then not make an impact defensively. And then if anyone becomes like almost like a secondary player to just absolutely useless in the playoffs, like Desmond Bain, where does he go? He like is balling out in the play-in tournament, and as soon as the playoffs start, he's like, "All right, I'm out. I'm done. I did my work for the year."
Yeah, I know Jaren Jackson. I mean, this is a guy that in the regular season he was getting like, 6 rebounds a game. He was averaging like 23, 24 points a game. But his shooting percentage dropped from around like high 30s to 27% from three, shooting about 37%. He honestly, like Jaren Jackson, if we're gonna bully someone like a Julius Randle, then Jaren Jackson had a Julius Randle moment this series. Like he went from a guy that in the regular season I think is worthy of an All Star appearance to you're Julius Randle, and like I don't throw away Julius Randle playoff slander often, but I feel like it's warranted. And when we talk about the Timberwolves series, I'll pay my respects because he's played well this series, but historically, not a very great performer. Jaren Jackson disappointed me this series.
And then we shift over east to the other one in the eight, and then we had both of LeBron's sloppy seconds battling over him in this series. We had the Cavaliers and the Miami Heat. And the Cavaliers, there's not really much to say. They just really hit a barrage of threes the entire series and never stopped. One night it was Ty Jerome. One night it was Max Struess. Of all people, and then you'd have other players step up, like Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell had a great series, and then they went out there. And after Tyler Hero said, "There's no way we're getting swept in this series," go out there and lose by 50. So Miami has a little bit of soul searching to do. Jimmy Butler definitely in the short term won that divorce as of right now. But outside of Ty Jerome proving that he is a once in a lifetime star, maybe having the greatest, I don't know, coming out party in the playoffs outside of Kate Cunningham. I mean, is there really anything else to say about the series outside of the words Ty Jerome?
Oh my god. The well, the Thunder dominated the Grizzlies, but I feel like the Cavs at points also dominated the Heat a little bit worse. I mean, 55-point loss in a closeout game, like Jesus
On the
Christ.
road.
On the road, like the part of it feels like the Heat were dead after game 3. Honestly, no. Honestly, after game 2, like the first 2 games you're like, "Okay, this is competitive," but then the second half would happen and the Heat just couldn't score any buckets whatsoever. And it didn't help that even when they had some bit of momentum, the white man from formerly Phoenix, Arizona, then he now plays in Cleveland, Ty Jerome. You want to talk about legends? There's legends like Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan. And then there's legends like, Derek Fisher, like Ty Jerome, like that 1 year game with Christian Braun a couple of years ago with the Nuggets. Like there are certain players that come out of nowhere, out of the woodwork. Mario Chalmers in the Heatles era. And I know
The
that there's
Kelly
many
Olynyk
more.
16-point fourth quarter knockout where you get the name against the
Exactly.
Wizards.
Exactly. Like there are certain players that regular season, they're role players, they might play 10, 15 minutes a night, and then they come out of nowhere and are the greatest player to ever play the game. And Ty Jerome was that guy in this series. Yes, Donovan Mitchell played great. Darius Garland did his thing, but Ty Jerome was absolutely not human in this series whatsoever.
No, not human at all. And honestly, what I think it was with this series, with Miami and Cleveland, I think Cleveland went from, living in Cleveland, playing in Cleveland, practicing in Cleveland, rehabbing in Cleveland to Miami. And I think they looked in the crowd, they went out in Miami, saw the local talent there, and played some inspired basketball. And after being in Cleveland, for half the year and then going to Miami and then seeing the people in the front row, the people when you walk around the airport and downtown, like, yeah, I would play inspired basketball too if I was stuck in Cleveland.
Yeah. I mean, I got to do the quick math here. In the When they were in Miami, they outscored Miami by nearly 100 points. Like, let's see, 13. Yeah, the first game 3 they won by 37, and then they lost by 55 the
88
following game.
points.
Yeah, 88 points. They outscored them more than the Heat had scored in either of those two games. That is absolutely unreal. All you need to do is, if you want to encourage a basketball player to play his best basketball, you get him some fine shit on the court side, and they're going to play the best basketball.
Miami, yeah. You go from Miami to Cleveland. That's kind of how it ends up. But we had both those 1-8 matchups come to an end. Both of our picks move on for that round. And then we had the 2 and the 7 seed for the East. It was fairly simple. Boston was mildly interested until game 5. And then in the fourth quarter, they're like, all right, time to pull away, time to blow out this Magic team. And then they ended up pulling away to a 30-point lead. Jason Tatum gets a bone bruise in his wrist. He missed game 2, which they won. Then when he came back in game 3, they lost. But he ended up winning game 4 and game 5 for them as the main scorer there, closing out the series with the near triple double there. So Boston kind of just cruises, and then they get some time to rest because the Pistons and the Knicks look like it might go 6 or 7. So they're going to get about 4 to 6 days of rest between series for just Jason Tatum's wrist to heal up and Drew Holiday's wrist to heal up. But like honestly, with the Magic, they played about as good as they could have versus Boston. And then Boston definitely feels like they still have another level to go to. And that kind of just felt like Joe Mazzulla playing around for fun at some points. And it seemed like, yeah, I can rest Jason Tatum if I need to. Drew Holiday felt like he could play if he needed to, but they rested him this series. They sat Porzingis for points in the series. Like it didn't feel like there was really any urgency at all for Boston going up against Orlando. They're kind of just like, yeah, Paulo's my friend, so I don't want to beat him too badly until game 5.
I'll say with the Magic, they surprised me. I thought this was going to be a sweep. They got a win, but they played very physical. I mean, they banged up Jason Tatum, they banged up Drew Holiday, and they were super physical. So I feel like next year, hopefully they can do something. I think Paulo's a great player. I like Franz Wagner, but the Magic need another star, and I feel like they're a team that, of any team in the East that are in the playoffs, outside of maybe the Heat, they need to make a trade like yesterday because they don't they have nice players, but they don't have a good roster. It feels like you have Paulo, who's a beast. Franz Wagner's a good player, but they don't have I feel like everyone else, like KCP is how many teams has KCP played for at this point? and then like the Corey Josephs of the world, like players who have played on pretty much every team. It feels like Jonathan Isaac hasn't done
Cole
anything in the
Anthony.
NBA. Like whatever. Yeah. So the Magic, I mean, they impressed me in this series because they played gritty, but I never at any point thought the Celtics were not at any point like they had control the entire time. The Tatum injury was unfortunate, but I mean dropped nearly a triple double in game 5. I think he's fine now. And now they have a week of rest, so Celtics, I didn't learn anything about the Celtics I didn't already know, but I did learn that the Magic, tough physical team, which have potential to be a good East matchup in the future if they can make a move and get somebody else or just get a better roster around Paulo, honestly.
Do you think right now would you take Paulo over Carl Anthony Towns? Like, do you think that was like a?
Yeah.
Do you think he's going to be tougher to guard for them? And then Franz
Yes.
Wagner, I feel like he. I don't think he's as good as Jalen Brunson, but I think he could be tougher to guard just because of his height at some points. Even though Jalen Brunson, maybe he's like overall a better scorer, but Franz Wagner maybe all around is a better player when you consider defense being half of the game as well.
Yeah, I think Paulo's, I would definitely take him over Carl Anthony Towns. I think Franz Wagner, I don't know if their play styles match, but I kind of think of him as like an Anthony Wiggins or Andrew Wiggins, I mean. Um, but I think he might be a better defender. So Franz Wagner, with his height, I think he would be a good fit, whether in Orlando or maybe a team like the Nuggets want to make a trade with him. But both of these players have a super bright future. I think Paulo, this was somewhat of a coming out party for him as well. Although we saw last year he played well in the playoffs as well. But I think Paulo has the ability to be one of the best big men in the league. And I think he's already pretty close already, but he played well. He was physical. He was pretty much their only focal point on offense, besides a couple of good Franz Wagner games. But I think Paulo is going to be they just need to make a move because the Magic, they've just kind of been locked into the eighth seed for the last what feels like decade.
Yeah, and they had some injuries too this year. Like Paulo was out for a little bit of time. They just don't have the depth right now. But I do think if they go out there and get another player, it could be interesting. So if that's someone like a Devin Booker, he'd be cool in a Magic uniform. I don't love the idea of going after someone like Giannis or Kevin Durant for some of these franchises with young teams, just because I feel like those guys really only have 2 to 4 years left at best in their prime. So I don't know how much they're really taking you over the top for the next 5 to 10 years, if that's your time frame.
Yeah, I think you're better off with a team like the Knicks or the Clippers or a team like that. But or if you're gonna help like build a team like the Rockets, we'll see how that works out with Kevin Durant. But um, I know what you mean. Magic, I think the Magic just need more depth than they need like another superstar because they already have Paulo. Franz Wagner's developing well. Can they just get a bench around them? They need like a I don't know, like not Dylan Brooks exactly, but a player that can be a role player, a good leader, might maybe a Marcus Smart potentially, just a gritty defensive player that they can have on the bench that they can learn from.
I don't wish Marcus Smart on anyone. God bless him, but wow, that's a tough one. But we have the Rockets and Warriors series is still going on right now. The Rockets pushed it to a 3-2 series, end up getting the win over the Warriors tonight. But I thought this was going to be about a 6 or 7 game series, and that's what it ended up being. But that was with the context of Jimmy Butler being healthy. But Golden State goes out there, gets a win with Jimmy Butler being injured, and then he ends up coming back with his hip contusion and then pushes through, gets 14 points in a fourth quarter, and then sends it back to Houston. So right now it's kind of up in the air, but I can't really see a world where Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and the Warriors drop a 3-1 lead to the Houston Rockets. But the Rockets have kind of proven themselves as a good team, and I thought this would be similar to like one of those playoff series, like where Memphis would go up like 2-1, then Golden State would win in six, or when Golden State went seven with Sacramento that one playoff year. But Jimmy Butler kind of proved in this playoff series that he is a different player in the playoffs. And I feel like this kind of validated my take about the Warriors, which kind of I was surprised that kind of got laughed at with the amount of people that were surprised when I'm like, yeah, I think the Warriors can go to the finals. If you look at their numbers with Jimmy Butler this season, they would have been the 2 seed if he had played the entire regular season with him. And he's a different player and just fits this style of playoff basketball. And then the guy has a hip contusion and then goes out there and gets 14 points in a fourth quarter, win a game where Steph Curry is having an off night. And then you want to talk about coming out parties for future stars like someone like Ty Jerome. How about Brandon Pachensky having a breakout game, like him going
Mhm.
off? And then how about Jimmy Butler being the guy who can push the right buttons with someone like Jimmy, with like Buddy Hield, where he's like, stop dribbling. I hate that. And then suddenly, last game, game five, or game four in Golden State, when it was kind of teetering on the line of going back to Houston 2-2 and potentially having to win a game six in Golden State and a game seven, Buddy Hield goes out there and also has a great game with Brandon Pachensky. And he was the player that he needed to step up. And Jimmy Butler kind of helped facilitate that. And then just him defensively, also with what Draymond Green's been able to do. And then now you have Quentin Post, who's like a legit stretch forward. And I saw him in the play-in tournament because I hadn't seen him play too much in the regular season. I'm like, oh, this guy will be interesting for the Warriors in the playoffs. And he's been a legitimate, like, reliable scorer for them through stretches in the playoffs. So I feel like this Warriors team is still talented enough to get to the finals. I feel like it's going to be an absolute 7 game war with them in Minnesota in the second round if that's the eventual outcome, especially with what we saw with Anthony Edwards in the first round going at LeBron, where he was grabbing him and pushing him, just the intensity with him and Draymond. And then you add Steph Curry. Like, I feel like that series is going to be insane.
Oh, 100%. I don't know. I mean, I don't think the Warriors have ever blown a 3-1 lead before, so them blowing a 3-1 lead could be pretty impossible.
Not
They
with
haven't
Jimmy
done that.
Butler.
They haven't done that in years past. I don't know. No, I do think that when I watched the series, like we were watching it together, I did feel like the Warriors were the better team. Not just because like the experience, but also like I just felt like with Jimmy Butler, with even players like Moses Moody as well. I just feel like the Warriors are a better defensive team. And I just feel like they have more people on offense that they can facilitate an offense with. Whereas like the Rockets, I don't know. Can you answer this for me? And maybe the Rockets don't even know either. Who's their number one guy? Because
I'd
when
say
I watch the
Sangoon.
game, it feels like it's Sangoon, and Sangoon is great. I think I think he should be him and Chet should be compared together, and Sangoon should be the better player. But then you have guys like Jalen Green, Fred Van Fleet. They paid all this money for Fred Van Fleet. Maybe he's the number one guy. He had a good game in Game 5. Is it Amin Thompson? We don't know. So I like there's 4 players that I think are capable of being that guy. But when I watch the game, it just feels like it's Sangoon. Like I don't think the Rockets. They need to figure out how their offense works because I feel like at some points it's hard for. I feel like and it happened with like we mentioned the Celtics, baby Celtics in the past. Like
With
I think
IT,
with these
yeah.
young teams, it's sometimes there's all these young players that are emerging and they're getting better and they're becoming these superstars. Sometimes they kind of can get in each other's way, and I feel like sometimes with this Rockets team, I've seen that happen in this series specifically.
Yeah, and with the Rockets too, like they got the star of the Wingstop commercial, Jalen Green, on their team, and he's someone who's gotten single digits in 3 games, and then he went off in one of the other games. So like consistency has been an issue for him, and then him being benched is an issue, and they ended up opting for defense, but really the strength of this team against the Warriors was when Steven Adams was in the game and they were playing Alperen Sangoon with Steven Adams and they had a bigger lineup, and then they're really disrupting what the Warriors were doing on the offensive glass and giving them problems getting to the rim. And then you had Thompson and Eason and then Fred Van Vliet going off. But like it is kind of a thing with this team where it does feel like they're really good, but they do need either someone to get better next year or to find that solidified second star, or maybe you just make a massive trade for someone like like a Jokic who can make everyone else so much better, that he can just kind of make up for some of those other flaws. But like Alperen Sangoon needs at least someone like a Jamal Murray, like Jokic has, because I do think by the time this guy's 25, he's definitely going to be in the MVP conversation every year. And I feel like he's on a trajectory because there are moments where he looked like the best player on the floor in the series, not just on his team.
Oh, 100%. I feel like he could be the next generation's Joker. He's young, he's tall, he's bulky, and unlike with Chet Holmgren, who looks like he's a toothpick running around, like Sengun looks like a beefy player. Looks like he could play hockey potentially. So I like Sengun a lot. I think that he'll ultimately be their superstar. Now, like, who do we pair him with? Do we keep the guys that we've brought in, like the Amin Thompsons of the world, Jalen Greens, or do we trade that for another superstar? We don't know. Or maybe it's a guy like Kevin Durant comes knocking around. He says, "Hey, I'll give you 2 good years. I don't need to be the guy, but I'll teach these young players, the ropes ultimately." I don't know if I trust Kevin Durant to be that guy, but I think that if that scenario arises and he's okay with that, he might be someone that helps the Rockets get to that next level, hopefully.
Yeah, it does feel like kind of Charles Barkley esque, even though I know Kevin Durant has 2 rings that he bandwagoned with Steph Curry. It's like Charles Barkley going to the Bulls and being like, "Can I join?" And then, "Oh, you got 3 rings with the Bulls and Michael Jordan." Ah, wonder how that happened. Interesting. But yeah, I do think it'll be an interesting offseason for the Rockets. But they did respond in Game 5, and then they had a massive blowout, so it was 131. I feel like that was a game that the Rockets felt like, what, Jimmy Butler still feels injured. Steph Curry hasn't quite been himself, so he went out there, dropped 131 points on them at home in Houston. So if they win in Golden State, this should give Houston some confidence going into next year. It's just, how do you stop yourself from becoming like the Magic, like the Hawks and like the Sacramento Kings when they'd have like a really good first appearance in the playoffs and then kind of like struggled or maybe wouldn't return back to back. But I do think the Rockets have the right coach. Ime Udoka has proven that. And then you at least know you're keeping Sangoon, but I feel like everyone else can be on the trade block next year. And they probably look to move on from Fred Van Vliet's contract so they can pay someone else.
Yeah, the only person they can't get rid of besides Sangoon is Jeff Green. Jeff Green must stay. That is the only rule that I have. But ultimately, I mean, we both agree. We both picked the Warriors to win in 6, and I think that that's what's going to happen. I think going to Golden State for Game 6, I know it's not the Oracle Arena anymore, but I feel like just still a really young Rockets team going to Golden State with, I think Steph's going to play better. I think Jimmy Butler will have a better game. I think the Warriors will be fine in Game 6, but Rockets, I still think they give me enough reason to believe in the Rockets moving forward. At least if they can make some changes in the offseason.
Have a lot of hope in the Rockets and another team similar to the Houston Rockets. I almost have more faith in them because when one team has a fire lit under them, a small spark, a kneecap shattering in the distance, suddenly an entire city decides to wake up and rise up. And one of those teams in the city of Detroit, the Motor City coming back, has been the Detroit Pistons. And I feel like this has been the biggest shock for anyone. And I picked this series to go 6, but because I thought it could be a pretty even matchup because the Knicks, the way they play, they're very Jalen Brunson reliant. They did not beat a top 3 team in the NBA this regular season. Tom Thibodeau has a tendency to wear his guys out and not necessarily be the smartest coach in clutch situations. So I'm like, you know what? I feel like this Detroit team will have a puncher's chance because if the Knicks lose, it's going to be a massive failure, especially you go out there, trade for Carl Anthony Towns, Julius Randle's balling out right now, DiVincenzo's balling out, and then suddenly Cade Cunningham and the Pistons are a couple points, one missed call away from being up 3-2, where you have Tim Hardaway get fouled at the end of the game. Presumably, he'd be going to the free throw line. You have the FIBA MVP on your team, and then Tobias Harris playing like the Tobias Harris that the 76ers paid. instead of Jimmy Butler. And now suddenly the Pistons, like, they're putting a lot of pressure on the Knicks. And then the last game that they won against the Knicks in game five, it's like Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart suddenly get hurt in the last minute of that game where Jalen Brunson rolls his ankle and then suddenly Josh Hart comes up limping him like in the most Knicks fashion. Like it First of all, the series didn't give me any hope that the Knicks are going to beat Boston. There's no reason for me watching the series to believe that the Knicks are suddenly going to turn it around and go after Boston. Like, I feel like it's going to be similar to the Orlando series. And then with the Pistons, it's like, I feel like the Pistons would be a similar outcome, but at least they're a young, competitive team. And it's a really interesting story if they make it. It kind of reminds me of the Trae Young Hawks going up against the 76ers and that playoff run with Cade Cunningham this year because he kind of reminds me like he's a very similar star type. I feel like to someone like Damian Lillard, kind of just with his temperament.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think the story of this series is that over the last 3 games, the plus minus is 0. So the difference between the Pistons winning this series in 5 and being down 3-2 is the difference of 0 points. They lost by 2, they lost by 1, they won by 3. Therefore, the net balance is literally 0. So like when we reviewed this series, I remember the comment section calling us idiots. Like, how could the Pistons beat the Knicks? But
Really?
I remember people going, I mean, when I said, I mean, I was talking to some coworkers as well. They were giving me shit for the Pistons.
I said Knicks in six, but like,
I also think that we're we're a couple of plays away from talking about an entirely different series where in some cases the Pistons could be leading this series or they could have won this series. The Pistons have impressed me. I have when I watch this series, it doesn't feel to me like the Knicks are a substantially better team. It doesn't feel like I'm watching the Cavs versus the Heat or the Thunder versus the Grizzlies, Celtics versus Magic. No, it feels like we're watching two teams that are evenly matched. It feels like Nuggets and Clippers, to be honest. And the difference is I feel like the Pistons, some of the players that they have there, like Cade Cunningham, it's been his coming out party. He's been great. Tobias Harris has playoff experience. Pistons just feel more gritty. And I don't know if it's because of Detroit, because we all know what the Lions have been doing the last 3 years. The Tigers, they're no slouch either. They're in their division lead. And the Red Wings, surely enough, they'll be in the playoffs again. Detroit is slowly becoming a great sports city once again that we've all been waiting for. I don't know if the Pistons, if it has to do with what we said to them last year when they were in the lowest of lows, but I do think that the Pistons could still win this series. I think if they win next game, then we might be seeing potential, especially because they're going to be at Detroit too, the city of Detroit going ballistic. I think the Pistons can still win this series.
no, I definitely think fate is on their side. And then, the Knicks could win the series or the Pistons could win the series. And honestly, the outcome doesn't matter because both of these teams are going to lose to Boston. And if you're going to be like, oh, the Knicks are going to be Boston, and then you're going to call me crazy for predicting this being a close and competitive series and then Pistons actually having a legitimate shot when the net difference in the series is 0. You can't suddenly turn around and be like, well, you're right about that, but you're still wrong about the Celtics walking all over either of these teams in 5 in the next round, most likely. Like, no. It's like it's your time to shut up and listen right now because I feel like the Pistons do have a really good shot of winning the series because the difference in the other two games was Karl Anthony Towns going absolutely ballistic from threes and hitting some pretty ridiculous deep threes. Do I think he stays that hot when the pressure is on and it's a closeout game when he starts to get in foul trouble? And then also Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart getting banged up at the end of the last game. Like, I feel like if you're a team who's the underdog, not supposed to win the series, and then you have a game six at home, there's still not really any pressure on this team to win. And they've done enough to impress the league, and they've already surpassed everyone else's expectations. So I feel like the pressure is on the Knicks, and I don't think Karl Anthony Towns is going to be as hot from three in game 6 and 7. And I feel like that'll be the difference.
Yeah, I mean, historically, he has not been a playoff performer. I just feel like also we could be setting up to see a 3-1 series meltdown from the Knicks. And if there's any team that I can see that happening with, it's the Knicks. I love Jalen Brunson, and there are some players like Josh Hart that I love on this team, but I do think that the Knicks have it in them to crumble when the pressure gets hot. And I think we're going to see that. Pistons, I think, are going to win game 6, and then game 7, which team is going to be coming out more competitive? A team that just came off losing 28 consecutive games last year and being one of the worst teams in NBA history shouldn't be there, shouldn't win that game. No pressure if they win or not. Or a team that traded all of their draft picks until like what 2035 for Mikal Bridges, which by the way, where has Mikal Bridges been? Can you find him? Is he lost? Is he in New Jersey? We don't know. And then Karl Anthony Towns. We have Jalen Brunson. Like they've invested so much more in the Knicks that if the Knicks lose in the first round to the Pistons of all teams, R.I.P. Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, I honestly wouldn't even mind if the Celtics for some reason choked it to the Pistons at that point. I'm like, all right, if the Pistons beat the Knicks, I'll accept the Cavaliers and Thunder finals. I guess.
No, I'll
No
accept a
one wants
Pistons
it.
and Thunder finals.
Yeah, Pistons and Thunder finals. But yeah, I feel like it's been an interesting series, and people who are calling us crazy, like the NBA is really not that hard to get a pulse on, and it's like pretty easy. I feel like to get a read. There's some series I felt like could have been more competitive, but like overall, like the only series we've gotten wrong so far is the one going on right now, and that's the Lakers and Timberwolves. But we both said that this is probably gonna go 7, and I mean, you really weren't wrong if you picked either team in this series, but it was just hard to pick the Timberwolves, and I really only picked against the Timberwolves in this series. And I feel like it's a good enough excuse with just the negative aura that Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert have on this team. But what I did not see was Julius Randle shooting 46% in this series. Guys shooting over 40% from three. You now have the most improved player in the playoffs in this series. And then also, I'm convinced that both Jimmy Butler and Anthony Edwards are Michael Jordan's son. It's just that video of him bumping LeBron and grabbing him in that series is so satisfying. And people are like, watch this video and then tell me that LeBron would have been better than Kobe or Michael if they faced him in the finals. They're like, no, this guy would have, both of those guys would have torn right through him. And then now you're seeing the Lakers like I kind of wanted to pick the Timberwolves, but like I've seen Luka Doncic with a subpar cast before, and I saw what he did to the Timberwolves last year, and that step back three that he hit on Rudy Gobert is still burned into my mind. But as of right now, looks like Luka Doncic got injured. He went to the locker room, so it seems like he's kind of quit on the series right now. Timberwolves are leading, so they're pretty much going to move on, face the Warriors in the second round. But they definitely surprised me a lot in this series, and I'm honestly really glad they won because like Anthony Edwards, we're waiting for the next face of the NBA right now. He seems like a more gifted Jimmy Butler at this point, where I feel like Jimmy Butler had to work really hard to get to this point in his career, and he won kind of just being that ultimate worker, hardest worker in the room. He wasn't the highest draft prospect, took him a little bit to develop, where Anthony Edwards, I feel like, just has a lot more natural talent. And then kind of just DiVincenzo being that extra shooter off the bench, and Julius Randle's 3-point shooting, not getting in foul trouble as much. And then this is the one series I feel like this year that Rudy Gobert can be a factor in and actually help them.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. To answer the Anthony Edwards face of the league questions, I think that especially if he can make the Western Conference Finals and then he'll go up against a team like the Thunder potentially, what could happen? I mean, what we could be set up for potentially is he takes down LeBron in the first round, takes down Steph in the second round, and then in the third round, potentially Jokic, potentially James, potentially the Clippers, or potentially the MVP SGA potentially. So you have a scenario where he takes down what people would consider this generation's greatest of all time, the greatest shooter of all time, and then Jokic, who could be the greatest power or greatest center of all time, or SGA, who's going to be an MVP. either way, if he can make the finals with that gauntlet of teams, he's gonna be the face of the league. I'm okay with that. Because the only other players that I can say can be the face of the league, just because of how young they are with what they're capable of, would be Jason Tatum and Luka Doncic. I'd love to throw Joker up there, but he's in his 30s, so I'm not going to put him there. I don't think he'll be the face of the league. So him, Luca, or Jason Tatum. But I feel like Anthony Edwards has more marketability. He's got a lot more confidence. He's got a certain swagger about him. So I feel like the NBA will want to market someone like him in a place like Minnesota, rather than Jason Tatum, who some people think are kind of cringy. Luca, foreign player, Stephen A. Smith mode. I don't know.
He's foreign. We don't
I
like
feel
him.
like
We
I feel
hate
like
him.
Anthony Edwards has that swagger that Kobe had, that Michael had, that Magic had. Like he's got a certain aura around him that makes sense for face of the league.
Yeah. And then the interesting thing is I feel like Wemby will also be in that conversation. And then what is something that Tatum, Edwards, and Wemby all do that Luca doesn't? And they're all elite at it, actually.
Defend.
Defend. And like it was so frustrating because I watched like just one segment of First Things First, and I hadn't watched like any mainstream sports talk, I feel like, in a while. Like I only watched like if I watched like anything like mainstream per se, like Pat McAfee, but mostly like the smaller breakdowns or like some of the smaller channels from like the players are just better than what you get on like Fox and ESPN. I was reminded of that because Chris Broussard goes on this whole soliloquy about how, Anthony Edwards and Luca, like the gap offensively, it's not that drastic, and Anthony Edwards can fit in more systems than Luka Doncic, and he can kind of just get his in the flow where Luka has to have the ball all the time, and he's also a elite defender where Luka only plays half the game. But then Nick Wright, just like all of that goes over his head. But he's like, yeah, but what Luka has done in his career offensively, it's like, yeah, but like when you play the entire game and then you're a legit menace on both sides of the court with what he's been doing to LeBron, and he's also much younger than Luka Doncic, where last year was really his first real test in the playoffs and his first real playoff run. And I feel like the person that won and helped win a lot of those games was Kyrie Irving. So my main question for the playoffs this year was, well, is LeBron going to be as effective as a teammate as Kyrie Irving, especially with the Lakers being a much weaker defensive team? And then also, I've seen Austin Reeves take a step back in the playoffs this year, which you've seen with his numbers kind of declining, and he hasn't been the same player in the playoffs as the regular season. So, like, I feel like that's going to be like an interesting part of the argument is like, is Luca kind of going to be satisfied with what he's accomplished right now? And how much is like the impact of Wemby and Anthony Edwards, and Wemby potentially being the first player in the league to win defensive player of the year and MVP, because I feel like he's going to end up doing that in the same year and potentially leading the league in scoring. Like he has the potential to do all three of those things in the same season.
Yeah, I think Wemby could definitely play a part there. Um, with Luca, I feel like with how bad of a defender he is, like I feel like the only person I know in the past, like Steph wasn't always a great defender, but the difference was that Steph was so prophetic as a scorer and just somebody that you had to game plan from half court basically with. With Wemby, why I don't think he'll be a face of the league is first, the Spurs haven't been successful yet. We need them to make the playoffs. And I also think that with the NBA, I feel like part of it is success. So, Tatum, Luca, both have made the finals. We'll see what Anthony Edwards does. But I also think it's like marketability as well. I'm not sure how Wemby will be in that category, but I do think there's some doubts there. When it comes to the Lakers in this series, I'm been a little disappointed because we have Luca, who's played great, but LeBron has looked tired. Austin Reeves has been inconsistent. And then you're really starting to see like how small the Lakers are because Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid have been bullying them this entire time, which I'm not surprised with. But it makes me think like if that trade never happened, would this series be closer? Like if it was just Anthony Edwards or Anthony Davis and LeBron, would this series be 2-2? Would the Lakers be in the like? How would this series have gone? Because I feel like with Anthony Davis, the Lakers would have matched out a little better.
Maybe. I think they would have matched up better. Still think they would have lost, and I also think Anthony Davis would have been injured by this point in the
Yeah.
series as well. So I feel like it's like one of those things where we'll never know. But I feel like in the long term, though, like you have to say the trade is worth it because LeBron does look tired in this series, and I felt like with this trade when it initially happened, we both said this year is not going to be the year. You're going to have a bunch of people in the media trying to convince you that the Lakers are real finals contenders. And that's the thing that I hate about the like modern media right now is it's kind of just become like gay WWE where you just have these guys like Shannon Sharp going out there screaming about LeBron, Lakers in 5, how many different Lakers in 5 conversations do we need to hear? Nick Wright predicting the Lakers to go to the finals. He picked the Bears to go to the Super Bowl before the season. Like you have so many ridiculous takes where they're just like fanboying over those teams where it's not even a real debate or media. And then everyone had the Lakers favored in the series over the Timberwolves. Like the biggest storyline, people are like, oh yeah, the Timberwolves are the better team. Like, no, the Lakers were the favorite coming into this series. Everyone said that the Lakers were going to win. You had the media talking about the Lakers as a finals team right now. And then they go out there and they perform like this when you hear nothing about the Thunder being talked about at all. All they talk about is just Lakers, 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 maybe Celtics. Is the NBA racist if they give the MVP to SGA or Jokic? Not how prolific both of those their seasons are because they can't articulate it. It's like it's so nonsensically cartoonish, and I feel like everyone it's kind of like almost like they become a satire of themselves at this point. It feels like a SNL skit of ESPN, but it's just ESPN. Then all they play now is First Take. It's cartoonish.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a complete disaster. First take, bring me back to first take with Stephen A. and uh, Skip Bayless. One last thing I'll say about this Lakers series before we move to the last two series is I've also been a little disappointed with how JJ Redick's performed, especially the last couple of games. Those in-game adjustments, last game only playing his starters in the second half. When you have LeBron who's in his 22nd season, you have all these guys that have been playing, 82 games. Didn't love that. And I do think he's been outcoached this season as well, or this series, I should say. So, like between LeBron being old, Luca not playing defense, and JJ Redick having some rookie mistakes as a head coach, like I think the Lakers are done. Whether they win this game or not, right now it's halftime. They're down by 10, but even if they win this game, I don't think the Lakers are going to win this series. Ultimately, you're going to see Warriors Timberwolves essentially.
Yeah, and Luca was grabbing his hip, and I don't think he's gonna be himself or return to this game. So Timberwolves, I think, are gonna win this game tonight. But like again, like the thing with JJ Redick is like the last person to play his player the entire game was Kevin Durant in Brooklyn with Steve Nash. And I think the toughest thing with the Lakers too, as they exit the playoffs, is LeBron is your second best asset outside of Luca you can trade right now. He's not going to get traded. He's going to retire. Then what? People are going to look at Austin Reeves and see what he did in the playoffs this year. Like he was supposed to be your three. Uh, can I get two role players for him? Yes, but are you going to get a haul for him after his playoff performance this year? Maybe if you're lucky, you could get someone like a Franz Wagner if you package someone like Ruri Hachimura as well. But then you're also losing Ruri Hachimura like depth wise, and then second best, like most valuable asset after Austin Reeves, then would probably be Ruri Hachimura after that. It's like this team really doesn't have that many assets to trade for a star, so they're going to have to sign someone. So they're not going to be able to go out there, get a guy who's unhappy, who just signed a contract extension, and then magically trade for them. They're going to be able to package Austin Reeves and Rory Hachimura and a couple first round picks and then have no depth after that. And I feel like this is going to be a very tough challenge to build this team around Luka Doncic. And then also coming into the playoffs, if you don't win the finals your first year as the Lakers head coach, you don't. It's never been done. So maybe he goes ahead and breaks that curse, but that's not nothing, I feel like.
No, I don't think that's nothing. Yeah, it sucks because they were supposed to trade for Mark Williams this year. The trade fell through. They were supposed to get him, trade Dalton Necht, and it fell through. And I feel like he would definitely be a nice contributor for them right now. But that trade, due to his um, when he did his physical, he failed it ultimately, and that's what ultimately hurt him. Lakers, I don't think they're ready for ultimately this upcoming play. They're not going to come back from 3-1 against the Timberwolves at the current state of things, especially if Luka's banged up. I do think JJ Redick can still win a title with the Lakers, but there's going to be a lot of we're going to need to have LeBron retire. They're going to have to free up the cap space from there. And when they do, maybe there's a free agent available that's interested in pairing with Luka. But when you get Luka, you need to get defenders around him. You need shooters. And I just don't know if they can do that with their situation right now.
Yeah. And then what do you think of though, like just that kind of like hypothesis that LeBron is your second most valuable asset you could trade, and he's probably going to retire either at the end of this season or next year? Because honestly, like looking him in the at him in the playoffs, he seems like he could give less of a fuck if they win or lose at this point.
I doubt that that's how he feels, but the Laker, I just feel like it's going to be similar. Like, remember when Gronk got traded from the Patriots to the Lions, and he's like, "You can't trade me. I'm retired." I feel like LeBron would pull the same thing. You imagine if they can trade LeBron to say, I'll just use an extreme example. Say the Nuggets, for example. Say they get Joker, which wouldn't happen, but hypothetically, he's going to get traded to the Nuggets and go, "You can't trade me. I'm retired," and that would be the end of LeBron's career ultimately. Because I feel like LeBron's going to have a farewell tour next year, and that's going to be the end of LeBron's career. So he's not going to want to go anywhere other than LA ultimately. I just don't think I can't see him playing anywhere else.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm just talking about. I'm asking you, like, since he is probably going to retire, how do you build this team if you can't trade him?
They have to sign somebody in free agency. They have to like they have to kind of do like how LeBron built the Heat, which was like somebody's a free agent this upcoming off season, and that's it basically. Maybe a sign and trade with Milwaukee for Giannis. Like it's not easy. It's definitely not. But they don't pay me enough to make those decisions. They are probably going to have to trade probably someone like a Roy Hachimura, package that, but there's a lot of depth they need. Like they need shooters and they need some defensive players to pair with Luka because Luka's clearly not a defender at this point.
Yeah, and then another team that needs shooters, defenders, and dribblers of the basketball. Apparently, the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, honestly, Tyrese Halliburton got in my head at the end of that series with what he was doing to Milwaukee because the Pacers, honestly, like how they looked in that series, like I felt like I just got so excited for the series that we're going to get with Indiana and Cleveland because it kind of feels very similar and it kind of feels like the same team. And I feel like Tyrese Halliburton is someone who felt pissed off that he got voted most overrated player in the NBA. And then with this team, what I noticed in this series was Nemhard took a step forward in the playoffs this year. He's now starting for them. And I felt like his offense was really good. And then you also have X factors like Obi Toppin stepping up in the series. He was coming off the bench and having a huge impact here. And then they kind of just have a really good flow where everyone understands their role. So I feel like just setting them up for the series versus Cleveland next round is going to be really interesting. I think it goes 7. I don't like have a strong feeling, but I think early on, like after that series, I think I'm going to go with Indiana because they have more playoff experience at this point than the Pacers. Rick Carlisle is a NBA Finals winning head coach. They got to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner can definitely go toe to toe. with Evan Mobley there, and then you have the shooting to really compete with what Cleveland does well, and I feel like they'll be able to match the tempo there. So really, this is going to be the series where Darius Garland can't be going out there and having these off games where he's going to be someone that's going to get exposed if he decides to not show up for Cleveland, because I feel like it's going to be all hands on deck for both teams. It's going to be a really fun series, but I'm going to go Indiana in 7. What Tyrese Halliburton was doing in that series to Milwaukee, like he was scaring some families in Wisconsin after that.
There's a lot of thoughts I have on this series. First of all, the Bucks are dead. They are
They're dead.
so beyond dead, and we criticized the Doc Rivers firing or hiring, I should say, which we're going to talk about the firing probably next week when he gets fired inevitably. The
And
Bucks,
Darvin Ham.
they are so dead. And when we hired him, we hated it initially. And we were right. The sad part about this is that what this is going to end in most likely is Giannis leaving, Dame being stuck in Milwaukee while he rehabs his injury, and the Bucks are just going to be terrible. Like this is the end of the Bucks. They were killed by the Pacers. And Halliburton, like this man's a killer. First of all, overrated. Like him being voted most overrated was. I didn't agree with it when it happened, and then especially after this series, I feel the same. The Pacers dominated the Bucks pretty much every game of this series, and then anytime the Bucks even had life, like they won Game 3, but the Bucks had an 8-point lead with 50 seconds left in overtime of Game 5. We could be talking about a game that's about to go to 6 games because we thought, like, depending on the health of Dame Lillard, this is going to go a 6-game series. But we forgot about one one key factor in this whole series that would disintegrate the Bucks, and that is, of course, Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers, everything he touched turns to stone. He killed the Celtics. He killed before the Celtics killed the Magic, killed the Clippers, killed the Sixers. Look at what the Sixers are after Doc Rivers got fired. They are
He's
a
a
shell
team
of
killer.
themselves. He is the epitome of team killer. And now the Bucks are dead. He has killed another team. He now has an Infinity Stone gauntlet that could snap and maybe kill the rest of the NBA for all we know. So now, like my thought on this series is that this is the swan song of Giannis Antetokounmpo in Milwaukee. There is no way in hell that he is going back to Milwaukee next year. As a guy that is approaching 30, he might already be 30 for all I know. And you're a guy that you already have a title. You're one of the best players in the league. Um, and ultimately, with a guy like Giannis, he's more likely to regress quicker because of his size. He's got to leave Milwaukee. Like, what is that team going to be? You traded for Dame. Dame hasn't worked out there, partially due to injury. But, like, who else is there? You have guys that are fucking fossils at this point. Kyle Kuzma had a double zero almost every game. Like, Kyle Kuzma did as much in this series as we did, ultimately. And we're just sitting on the couch watching the game with them. So the Bucks are dead. Credit to I mean, I love the Pacers. This team, I think, will also beat I agree with you that I think they beat the Cavs, but this series, I think, is more about how dead the Bucks are, how much Doc Rivers killed them, and how much age and time has killed them as well. Because this team is so old. Like, who are they going to beat besides maybe the '70s Bucks that are now walking in canes ultimately?
Yeah, I know. I mean, at this point, if Giannis left, we could try them out in the WNBA. I mean, Brooke Lopez is in his late 30s at this point, and he was like, I don't know. Like he was being tortured in this series. Like Brooke Lopez looked like an old man playing at the Y or the park in this series. So I definitely think Giannis leaves where he goes. Not exactly sure at this moment. That's one of those situations I'll kind of just sit back and see. I know um, everyone says Miami. Like Dame is just gonna go to Miami. Like I don't know if that's really a destination for Giannis at this point. I've heard people say that the Knicks just signed Karl Anthony Towns as a precursor to a bigger trade that they might try and do. So the Knicks may go after Giannis. So I feel like with the Knicks, if they do go after Giannis, you're gonna get Giannis for like maybe another year of his prime. You're gonna sign him to another extension, and then he's going to fall off. It's going to be similar to the Paul Pierce to the Nets trade with him and Kevin Garnett. I don't
Yeah.
think he'll be as bad, but watching that series, Giannis is awful at basketball. Like Giannis just drives to the hoop, tries to go right through you, elbow you in the face, go over you or dunk over you, but Giannis, you know, with a simple post move or just trying to shoot or anytime he can't dunk or anytime he's at the free throw line or anytime he's trying to take a jump shot, like the reason why Giannis isn't going to age well is not because of his size. It's because he still doesn't have any skill outside of going through people on offense. Like, and then you're a great defender, but with your athleticism, like that's going to be what makes you great. Your defense also goes when you're older, and you're a dominant defender.
Yeah. I hope that's not the case for Giannis, but I mean, you look at someone like Russell Westbrook, right, who thrived on his athleticism throughout his career. We'll talk about the Nuggets and Clippers series in a minute, but you see how he's regressed, how that's impacted his performance as a player. Um, I don't know. Maybe Giannis can adapt, but right now he hasn't. You have 10 years of sample size on Giannis. You know what kind of player he is at this point. Can he adjust his game as he gets older? I guess we'll see, but um, the way it looks like now, like between his free throws and everything you mentioned there, I do see like he could regress a lot quicker than a lot of these other guys.
Yeah, no, he's gonna regress like someone like Dwight Howard did, someone like Shaq did. So I feel like if he goes somewhere like the Knicks, like if you sign him to like a 3-4 year deal, which he's probably gonna command, and like rightfully so, he should get as much money as possible. The last few years of those deals are gonna be pretty rough for you, and I don't think he's gonna win another title. I think that was kind of a one and done situation for him, especially just the way he won it with how horrific that Suns team also was. Like I feel like that was probably one of the worst finals matchup recently outside of maybe Denver and Miami, which was just such a mismatch.
Yeah, that's what we've missed about the NBA. We just missed having high quality teams in the finals. But I want to talk about the Clippers and Nuggets series because I feel like of all the series, this one has been the best. And I would say that it's close, but I honestly think like it's not really that close. We have we just had the Nuggets win last game. They're up 3-2. But I'd very well think this series is going to go 7 games ultimately. Last game, we just didn't see a great game out of James Harden and a couple of other guys on the Clippers. But we saw Murray drop 45 points, which I feel like in the regular season, we've been missing that out of Jamal Murray. He now has as many 40-point games in the playoffs as he does in the regular season in his career, which I feel like speaks to what kind of player Jamal Murray is. But this series, I mean, they're going to be playing in LA tomorrow. We'll see that on Max. But thoughts on this series, it going 7 potentially, or if you think the Nuggets will close out, but just the battle that we've seen so far.
Yeah, so going into this series, I was like, this is going to be, respect to both teams. So I picked the series to go 7. I picked the Nuggets just because I thought Jokic was overwhelmingly going to be the most dominant player in the series. And I still believe in Aaron Gordon and that core four that the Denver Nuggets have. And I mean, like, even if Jokic is the head coach, still believe that they can win it. And then this is one of the reasons why watching the regular season can burn you if you're an NBA fan. Like, sure, we can look at some metrics and some analytics and how some players have taken a step forward in the regular season can give us an indication for the playoffs. But what gives you an indication for the playoffs is a combination of what happened in the playoffs last year and then what's also going on right now in the regular season, but it's kind of a glass half full when you take it. So that's why when I looked at the series, people are like, yeah, Jamal Murray isn't good this year. It's like, no, Jamal Murray always does this. It's like you people don't pay attention for like when you're watching basketball. If you just follow it and you've been watching it for 10 years and you half pay attention to what's happening, you would realize that every single year Jamal Murray gets way better in the playoffs than he is in the regular season. He's just one of those guys that maybe he takes like halfway through the first round to get going, but once he gets going, He's one of the most unstoppable players in the league. He has had some injury issues, but it's definitely still in there. He still has the ability to go nuclear. This was a team that got to 7 games versus the Timberwolves, and matchup wise, it could have been an interesting series, and maybe they take on the Dallas Mavericks. But I also said there's no reason that this team still can't make the finals this year, even though I don't think they will. But I still pick them to win. And I feel like the overwhelming factor in that is just how good Jokic is in his dominance. But this series has really highlighted Aaron Gordon just being that Draymond Green for this team, doing all of the little things, having the first buzzer beating dunk of all time. That's right, the first one ever. And then the moment I knew this team was going to be good and win the series is when the coach benched Michael Porter the first game. I was like, oh, that is some real G shit. And that's why I was worried when they fired Mike Malone and like, is this coach just going to be soft and kind of pushed over? But after the game, the coach benches Michael Porter, talks about like, if your shot's not falling, you still need to be engaged. You still need to try and get to the rim. You still need to play defense. You still need to pass and rebound. And then Jokic said that in the press conference as well. It's like, it's playoffs. You can't be soft in this. And then so we can go home as championships to ride horse. Like then he goes and backs his coach up. Like, and then Jamal Murray goes nuclear. We get some good games from Westbrook, some good games from Christian Brown. Like this team, like, okay, they turned it around. And I think they close it out in game 7. I still think it goes 7, but the Clippers aren't giving me the feeling that they're going to win this series. And the Nuggets, I felt like, have looked like the better team throughout the series. I just don't believe in Harden enough. And I don't think Kawhi Leonard at this point has more to prove or has more desire to win than Jokic does.
Yeah, I think the Nuggets definitely feel more like a cohesive team. I've been impressed with what I've seen from Kawhi this postseason. I feel like it's been his reintroduction to the league, but there are still doubts with the Clippers, right? Like James Harden, where was he in Game 5? He was nowhere to be found. And then on the other side, you have Jokic, who is going 30, 13, and 10 right now. That's a stat line, which is like you couldn't like if your my career was maxed out, you couldn't even have stats like Jokic at this point. It's ridiculous. This man is on a whole nother planet. And then you're also seeing like a lot of people were criticizing Russell Westbrook going to the Nuggets. And I feel like some of the criticism isn't fair, but Russell Westbrook is one of those guys like he's just a tone setter. He's got a lot of energy and he can help elevate some other players around him. He just sometimes he just goes a little too fast, but he's a guy that I've always loved. But his fit with the Nuggets has been great. I feel like this year, like he's hitting shots and he's defending and he's doing everything you need to do as a team player. So I've liked what I've seen from him. And then Jamal Murray, who must be, I would say, probably the most underrated point guard of our generation at this point. You've seen a bunch of playoff runs where he takes it from being a good point guard in the regular season to being one of the best point guards in the postseason. So with that alone, like the Nuggets have the postseason experience. They know what it takes to win. I would take the Nuggets to win. And then the Clippers, like I've never it's just one of those teams you just don't bet on. You just don't bet them to succeed, especially with historically blowing 3-1 leads. And, James Harden hasn't shown to be a playoff performer when the going gets tough. So I would take the Nuggets to win this series as well. But this has been a great series to watch.
They also historically have just been horrible versus Denver.
Not too.
They blew a 3-1 lead to them in the bubble. And then also too, like legacy wise, like if Kawhi wins another ring this year and the Clippers win a ring, I feel like people would be like, "Oh, cool, the Clippers won a ring." Kawhi has 3 rings, but like, how much does it really change versus Jokic winning 2 rings? And I feel like just him emotionally at this point in his career just has a much deeper desire to win a championship. I feel like too, you just watch the game and I feel like my reasoning behind picking the Nuggets, like I've seen the effect that LeBron has on a team in the playoffs. and how that can translate to a series when he's seriously undergunned. Like he just needs a couple players to help him out, and you saw with Jokic, he just needs Aaron Gordon and someone else like Jamal Murray and Russell Westbrook to show up and show out for him. And usually one or two guys is enough for them to get it done, and then you see other guys stepping up. But I do like Westbrook a lot in this series though, because I feel like Jokic is someone that he respects enough where he doesn't need to be the guy taking the shots. And then where he is missing a lot of threes, I mean, he's making enough of them. And then on the glass as well, I feel like he's made his biggest impact just as an offensive rebounder.
Absolutely. And in the postseason, what the Clippers have been doing is they've essentially allowed Russ to take those shots. And, historically, that's not always a good thing. But this year, I mean, let's keep in mind that playoff wise, he shoots 29% from three. This year, he's shooting 40% from three. Like what we normally see from Russell Westbrook, we haven't seen this part of Russell Westbrook probably since after the KD divorce, ultimately. So he's getting these wide open shots. He's hitting them. He's getting the rebounds. He's facilitating the ball. He's scoring when he needs to. Like everything that you would need out of Russell Westbrook, you're getting out of Russell Westbrook. You're getting the most efficient Russell Westbrook that you're probably ever going to get at this current time of Russell Westbrook's career.
Yeah, and then too, just like the coach challenging Michael Porter and then Michael Porter responding, coming up with a couple key blocks in this series. Like coming from behind, blocking Bogdanovich at some points, and then stepping up, still being engaged. And then he is someone who is still capable of getting you 25 or 30 on a given night as well. And you just need him to do that once in the series, and you'll be good with it. You get a game from Gordon where the first buzzer beater dunk. I mean, this series feels straight out of like 2013,
Oh, huh. Oh, yeah.
where like the
This,
entire NBA we had the Heat, but like the Heat had just beat the Thunder. They won their first ring. You had the Spurs with Kobe. You had the Grizzlies, where it felt like there was just some wars in the first round, whether it's like Rockets, Clippers, just some iconic series, Celtics, Knicks.
oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I like about this current playoff run. Like, we look through the West, right? Obviously, we have the Thunder, the Cavs, the Celtics. Like, those guys are fine. But, like, Rockets, Warriors has been great. Knicks and Pistons have been great. Nuggets, Clippers, Lakers, Timberwolves. We look like we have ourselves a game in game five. Like, all of these series have been excellent. So I'm excited to see this and the semifinals that are to follow ultimately.
And then for the semifinals, I have Boston. If they play the Knicks or Pistons, do you have them beating either of those teams?
Yeah,
And then
of course.
Cleveland, Indiana. We both have Indiana in 7.
I'm calling the Pacers in 6.
Pacers in 6. All right,
I think the
a little
Pacers are going to
upset.
beat the Cavs. Like, it's one thing facing the Heat with Tyler Hero and Andrew Wiggins, a team that honestly felt dead that maybe shouldn't have even made the playoffs, and a team like a Pacers who just bullied the Bucks. The Bucks, who at one point people were saying was the only threat to the Celtics in the East. I think they go to Cleveland. I haven't seen the Cleveland team be tough so far. Like they've faced the Heat, but they're significantly more talented. Let's see what happens when Halliburton pushes them around. When um, a number of other of their players just push. Like I think the Pacers are just grittier, and I feel like they match up with the Celtics better than the Cavs. So I think they can beat them in 6.
Yeah, especially get like Halliburton, who like on a given night will have a game where he has like 3 points but 15 assists, and he
Yeah.
does it in such a fast pace where it looks he's like almost operating at a Rondo type of efficiency and offensive like floor general type of scheme, but at like the speed of De'Aaron Fox. It's like truly something special to witness in real time.
Oh, 100%. But I do think that it's going to be Celtics Pacers, and the Celtics will prevail. But I think the Celtics would win 6.
And then Timberwolves Warriors. I think the Warriors are going to win. I think we both think that. We both picked the Warriors to win. Timberwolves up 3-1. Don't think the Lakers are going to come back from that deficit here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Timberwolves Warriors. I think it depends on the help with Jimmy Butler in Steph, but I would take the Warriors just for the fact that they have the experience and they are. I mean, I think they're the hungriest of the teams. Timberwolves, I think, will be competitive for a long time. Warriors have like 2-3 years that they're going to be competing until it's over. So Ant has to prove to me that he can take that from Steph. Otherwise, I'm just going to take the Warriors.
Yeah, and for me, with the Warriors, I think Randall is gonna have a tough time with Draymond Green here, and I feel like Julius Randle is not gonna shoot 40% in the next series, and then Moses Moody and Gary Payton Jr., Pachensky, and Jimmy Butler are all going to be able to rotate on Jimmy Butler, but I feel like Jimmy Butler and Anthony Edwards just defensively going at each other will be special in that series. And then I feel like Steph Curry is really just going to be the X factor where it's like the Timberwolves have Ant, but I feel like the Warriors defensively match up with them so much better with the Lakers. When you ask me who's a good Lakers wing defender, it's like Austin Reeves. That's it. Like they don't have a ton of versatility with the Warriors. You have Pachensky, Moses Moody, Gary Payton Jr. off the bench. Jimmy Butler can guard 1 through 5. Draymond Green can guard 1 through 5. So I don't think like Nas Reed, Jimmy Butler, and Jimmy Butler, Julius Randle, and Rudy Gobert are going to be effective in this series versus the Warriors like they were versus LA.
I can agree with that. And then Thunder, we believe it's going to be Thunder's Nuggets ultimately. That's a fascinating series for me. Part of me wants to take the Nuggets just because I feel like in the battle so the MVPs, I would take Joker over SGA. But the Thunder have their head coach. I mean, they dominated the Grizzlies this entire time. How will they be when they're tested against the Nuggets? I think the Thunder are good enough to beat the Nuggets. I would take this is going to be a battle though. I think this goes 7. I'll take the Thunder in 7 with this series, but I'm not really convinced. You could probably convince me that the Nuggets could beat them, but I think the Thunder, they won 68 games. They're tough. They didn't show me in the first round that they're um, a team that I should disrespect. So I'll take the Thunder over the Nuggets in 7.
Yeah, this will be an interesting series, and they didn't show you that they shouldn't be a team that you should disrespect, and they did earn some people's respect just with how they dominated Memphis. But you're going up against a team that does not have a point guard who can shoot, and then Zach Edey looked completely lost in that series at times for Memphis, and then Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bain weren't themselves. So like the Grizzlies just cut completely ran out of the gym. But you did have that game in game 3 where they're up 29 with John Morant out. So when you take a look at that, and then the Grizzlies being competitive at times in that series, I have the Nuggets in 6 because I feel like the way to beat Oklahoma City is you have to be poised. You have to be able to slow down the game. And then you have to also be able to match their hustle and intensity. And I feel like Jokic is going to be able to dominate Chet and Hartenstein on the boards. I don't really see them giving Jokic a ton of trouble. It could be similar to what Gobert and Towns did. I just don't think Chet and Hartenstein defensively are the same tandem that Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns were last year. And then you look at Jamal Murray, who's someone who just turned it up, where he's someone who can go toe to toe with those guards. Westbrook is going to bring the intensity, as well as having the length of Michael Porter on the floor, who can kind of match the intensity of some of the guards they have. So can Christian Braun. Like, I feel like these teams, the Thunder look like they have a much better roster, but having a much better roster when you have two extremely dominant players and then someone who has the veteran experience and the experience of someone like Russell Westbrook, I just see Denver going out there, being able to slow the game down, control the pace, fall down 2-1, but I think they end up taking care of the series in 6.
I can see it. I think they're definitely capable. It's going to be a battle with those two teams. Now, the winner of that series, you have the Nuggets, I have the Thunder, but they face the Warriors in this scenario. Warriors Nuggets or Warriors Thunder. Do you still I think you had, if I remember correctly, you picked the Warriors to make the finals. Do you still believe in that?
Yeah. If Jimmy Butler is healthy, they'll be in the finals.
Okay. I'm not quite ready for. I don't know if I can pick the Thunder, and I just something doesn't feel right about the Thunders in the finals. I don't know what that is. Um, I'll pick the Warriors there too. I think the Warriors and Celtics, and I would pick the Celtics over the Warriors.
Yeah, sometimes it just feels too easy. But, like when it feels too easy, sometimes it's hardest to make the pick. But sometimes, like, just going with the Thunder, it's like the easy pick to make. So you want to think outside the box. But I feel like that's where kind of you get the hesitations. Like, yeah, they dominated the regular season. So I'll pick them through the finals. But I feel like we'll have to take it with what they
Each
show
series,
us in the second round. Yeah.
I got to take it with each series because the Grizzlies also don't have a coach either, and they also didn't have John Morant either. So I
And he
feel like
can't shoot.
they did what they were supposed to do. That's why, like, it's the same with the Cavs. Like, okay, you beat them and you dominated them, but that's what you're supposed to do. You're the eighth. You're the first seed. They're the eighth seed, and you were significantly better. So I don't know. They still have to prove it to me a little bit, but NBA playoffs, it's looking great. We have a fourth quarter game with Nuggets and Timberwolves and Lakers. Right now, it's 81-80 Timberwolves. So we'll be checking that out as we go to our next topic. The NFL draft. We've been doing draft previews and draft recaps over the last several months, but the 2025 NFL draft has come and went. We had Shador Sanders that fell all the way to the fifth round, probably the most ridiculous NFL drop in the history of the NFL. We know now where Cam Scatabo went, Cam Ward, all the other great players from the NFL. But you have an article from, I believe you said the NFL, going through that. We'll go through the NFL draft, give our reactions, and then ultimately talk about where everyone landed ultimately, the superstars.
Yeah, so we'll talk about where the superstars landed inevitably. And then I'm pulling this up here, and this is essentially just from NFL.com. We go through, and then the author grades every single team. So we'll go through kind of how we feel about the players that they drafted at the position with the needs they filled in with that draft. It's hard to predict if a guy's going to be a bust or not. These are young guys. They have to be respectful, but like we'll base this off like with the position, like does this make sense, and like with the player where he was ranked coming into the draft, does it also make sense? So starting with the Cardinals, they had a couple picks in this draft. Their number one pick, though, defensive tackle, need a lot of help on defense there. Get Walter Nolan. Second round pick, you get Will Johnson, who's a cornerback out of Michigan. Round three, you get an edge Jordan Birch out of Oregon, and then round four, linebacker. Then five, six, and seven, you go corner, offensive guard, and safety. So definitely more defensive heavy. You do have your issues on offense for the Cardinals, but you have a defensive coach at this point right now. If you're going to give him another chance, you might as well go defensive heavy. But I would have liked to see a tackle in there at some point.
I think I think my favorite pick to the Cardinals had Will Johnson. He was supposed to be a first round pick. I think he was honestly going in the high teens at one point. They scooped him in the second round. He fell. So I like them addressing their defense. Last year, they couldn't stop a nosebleed, and now hopefully they can do that this year. We'll see how good their D tackle is, but I like them going defense because their offense is good enough for now. They still have a long way to go rebuilding wise.
Yeah, and like the thing with Kyler is Kyler at this point has proven he's gonna be inconsistent, and the only way to get to the playoffs and have success with an inconsistent quarterback who can't see over his own offensive line is to have a exceptional defense that's consistent week in week out, where your quarterback really only needs to get you 24 points to win in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then after that, so solid draft for Arizona. Good job out there in the valley. Hopefully, you're building something good there and not mediocre and forgettable like every other team. We have Atlanta, and then Atlanta goes round one, edge, round one, edge. Round three, we get a safety. Round 4, a safety. You guessed it. Then round 7, you get an offensive tackle, but you go Jalen Walker and James Pierce. And then you had that first round pick out of Tennessee. And then Jalen Walker is out of Georgia there. But you think they're trying to get a pass rush? I don't know. I see a theme here.
Well, their pass rush was pathetic last year, so I don't hate it. Um, Jalen Walker, we'll see how he pans out. I did like Shamar Stewart a little better, but I mean, their pass rush was pathetic. They still have Matt Judon, I believe, so we'll see what he can contribute there. But they needed to address their, I mean, two edges, two safeties. Like they're like, yes, let's get some sort of pressure, please, and maybe that'll make the Falcons the division winner. We'll see.
They like literally don't need any pieces on offense. I mean,
No.
their quarterback Michael Penix coming into the season was like, I think offensively we have the best roster. And then the Falcons were like, heard that guy ain't whining for any more receivers, so that just gave us the okay to take 2 edge rushers in the first round. So if you hit on both of those and you have 2 monsters, Atlanta early Super Bowl favorite. Calling it right now, because what Michael Penix showed us at the end of the season was he's not going to be a guy that I think puts up gaudy numbers, but he seemed like a guy who the game is already kind of slow for him. And then he seemed clutch last year. Like he seemed like Sunday Night Football didn't really bother him. He was making a lot of really tough throws in the pocket in the window. So I'm excited for Atlanta next year.
Yeah.
And then, moving on from Atlanta, we have Baltimore. And then Baltimore got an A with this grade in the draft. And in round 1, they go safety. They go Malaki Starks. Round 2, they go edge Mike Green out of Marshall. Round 3, they go offensive tackle. And then round 4, they go linebacker. And then Baltimore has like 5 6th-round picks. So round 5, they go offensive tackle, and then their 5 6 round picks, they go corner, kicker, wide receiver, defensive tackle, corner, and then they had a 7th round pick, offensive guard there. But really notable tackle in the 3rd round, and then Mike Green and Malaki Starks in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, I like it. Addressing their needs. They pair him, Milwaukee Starks, with Kyle Hamilton. If he works out, they're going to have one of the best secondaries in the NFL. So I like what they did there.
Um, so why would they draft a kicker out of Arizona? I thought Arizona was having tryouts for kickers because it was so pathetic. But what happened?
They probably just needed a kicker. I'm not sure. I
And
think.
then
Are you talking about ASU with their kicker?
yeah, so they drafted Tyler Loop out of Arizona. Is that a
Oh,
different
I think that might be.
university?
That yeah, we're ASU. I think
ASU.
this is the Tucson one. This is the one that's in Tucson.
Because I remember you telling me you're gonna go that tryout because they were doing like walk-ons for kickers, like the episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia when they try
Yeah,
out for like the
I
Eagles.
I thought about it, but then I tried to kick a football. I'm like, this is almost embarrassment porn. I should probably chill. I'm not that
That would
guy.
make it even funnier. Almost funnier than Josh Allen when he silently died inside when he cried
Watch
laughing
Sinners.
because of his sadness. Because the Buffalo Bills, for me, get an F. Because how are we not going to go out there and draft a wide receiver? 1st round, corner. Did you need a corner? Sure. But do you need a receiver even more? Yes. 2nd round, defensive tackle. You go TJ Sanders. You go edge rusher in the 3rd round. Then you go defensive tackle. Then you go corner in the 5th round. 5th round, you go tight end. Then you go corner, offensive tackle. And then in the 7th round, you go out there and thank God you take Caden Prather for your only receiver taken. But the Buffalo Bills decided what they saw last season at wide receiver was acceptable. And then they're going to roll into the year with old Amari Cooper, and then Mac Hollins isn't even there anymore. He's in New England, so it's like,
They haven't
what
re-signed Amari
exactly the
Cooper.
plan here?
They haven't re-signed Amari Cooper. He's still
Not
there.
yet.
He's still on a
Uh,
free agent.
So Mac Hollins is in New England. Like, who is in their wide receiver room at this moment besides tight ends?
Uh, they have Keon Coleman, and
Thank God we're saved. We
yeah,
have
they have
Keon
Keon
Coleman.
Coleman and what's his name? Khalil Shakur. That's like their main. That's their guy. Which I like Khalil Shakur, but they could have definitely
So
gone after a wide receiver. I mean, like a few picks later, Houston got Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State, and there's a couple others. Like they should definitely have signed somebody, or better yet, like why is Amari Cooper not on your team? You traded. Did they trade like a fourth round pick for him? Like, why would you just let him walk at this point? It's not like he can't play still. Like he still plays well.
yeah. So yeah, Keon Coleman gets hurt, season over. At this point, Khalil Shakur goes down, season over. But what do I know? I'm just talking about the Bills on the internet right now. And then after the Bills, a team that went out there and needed a wide receiver at pick number 8, they go out there get Tatario McMillan out of Arizona. Then they go edge rusher in round 2 and 3, running back and safety in round 4. With their fifth round picks, they get a defensive tackle and their tight end. So their first round pick in a decade, it feels like, for the Carolina Panthers after trading away all of their picks um, for Bryce Young here and giving the Bears Caleb Williams. You go out there and you draft a wide receiver. I like it a lot. You're going out there, you address the biggest need on your team, and you do the one thing that you've needed to do. You go out there and you get Bryce Young a lot of help. And then in the offseason, what did you do? You aggressively went out there and went after offensive line talent. So I feel like the Panthers don't win their division next year because I feel like Atlanta will be really good if their edge rushers pan out. But you take a step forward and you're potentially a wild card team.
Yeah, I love this pick. They're comparing him to Drake London. They're both the same build. This dude is 6'5", 220. He's a beast. And I think especially with what I saw from from Bryce Young last year at the end of it, starting to get his swagger a little bit. Some quarterbacks takes a little bit of time for them to get good. There's plenty of examples of that in the current NFL. But you get him a legitimate number one receiver, which could be McMillan here, who's an absolute freak. Um, and then you get him an offensive line. Like, don't look now, but Carolina, I don't know if they're going to be in the playoffs next year, but the Saints are certainly not going to be a threat. And the Bucks, they're a little bit older. Do they take a step back? And then the Falcons, there's still questions about their defense. Like the Panthers, they're in a place where they're going to be competitive next year. I think that we're going to start to see them win some games.
Yeah, too, and like the Falcons may have a better team, but Michael Penix had injury issues coming to the NFL. Kirk Cousins has psychological issues being on the field. He has like whatever the quarterback version of erectile dysfunction is. He has that affliction right now, which is what it looked like because he had trouble performing at the end of the season last year. No judgment. I'm just saying he had some trouble getting into the pocket and performing, if you know what I mean. So good draft for Carolina. Like going after a receiver at 1. Pick I don't like. Chicago Bears here for me get a F because in round 1 you go after another tight end, and even his name is close to Cole Kmet. I mean, you draft Colston Loveland out of Michigan, so you're basically saying, "Yep, at this point we're breaking up with Cole Kmet." And then you also draft a wide receiver in the second round, go offensive tackle in the second round, get a defensive tackle. So you have 3 second round picks, and you get 2 skill players, tight end, wide receiver, offensive tackle, a defensive tackle. Fourth round, you get a linebacker. Fifth round, corner. And then round 6 and 7, you go offensive guard, running back. But like the fact that you had 3 second round picks, if you hit just on a wide receiver and a tackle, like feel like that's gonna help this team a lot. Just if you have a third guy and then you can have Cole Komet, and he can help bring along Colston Loveland, similar to what they have with Dalton Kincaid in Buffalo right now with Dawson Knox. And then if you have Luther Burden, who you drafted, now go out there, and then you have your rookie Roma Dunze from last year, and then you also have DJ Moore on this team. Like that's a really solid skill team. And then you also address your tackle position as well. You did it in free agency. get another solid piece on the defensive line. Like, okay, Chicago takes another good step forward under who?
Ben Johnson,
And they
baby.
may have had the best free agency.
They did have a great free agency. I was confused by the Colston Loveland pick, but then I saw some of his footage, and I don't think he's going to replace Cole Kmet yet. But if they can pair him like they paired Sam Laporta and Brock Wright, these guys are dogs. Like Cole Kmet, we already know Cole Kmet and what he can bring. Plus, you have Roma Dunze. Plus, you have DJ Moore. Plus, I'm not exactly sure who they addressed with their running back position, but the Bears, like they've been tackling their offensive line. Their offensive line should get substantially better. And now they have two beast tight ends that can help continue the run game. Like the Bears are looking like they can be mighty fine. Now, granted, what they have to worry about is that entire division could also be good. So that is the risk that we run with the Bears, unfortunately. They're in a division that's completely loaded. But I like this. I think they did fine this draft. I would probably give them a C, ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with this draft really depends again on like how those players pan out. But like you take a tight end at number 10, almost just feels like them taking the best player available, but it's similar taking a page of what the Lions did. Ben Johnson kind of bring a page out of their book where you go out there and draft a really elite tight end, someone who has the potential to be the best tight end in the league with Sam Laporta. Not saying he is, but I feel like he definitely has the potential to be. And then you trade TJ Hawkinson when he's asking for a contract to Minnesota. And I feel like they might do the same thing with Cole Kmet as well once they know Colston Loveland's a hit, because Detroit did the exact same thing. So you're kind of seeing him take the same page out of their book, and then you get three pivotal positions you desperately needed in the second round.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, we'll see how it pans out for them. Next on that list here, who do we have?
So next on the list here, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. They got a B minus on this scorecard from the author. And then at number 17, they go edge rusher Shermer Stewart, Texas A&M, and then they go in round two linebacker, offensive guard in round three because they haven't spent enough money on the offensive line. Got to draft some too, and then you go linebacker in round four, offensive tackle in round five. And then sixth round, they take Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech, the running back there. So defensive heavy for them. I mean, you go edge rusher and linebacker, and then kind of after the third round, like, will you actually have an offensive lineman that pans out? I don't know. It's Cincinnati. So for me, I'm fairly lukewarm on this draft.
I like Shamar Stewart a lot. I think that should help them be better defensively. Honestly, because nothing can make them worse, unless if maybe some XFL players join them. Maybe I like Shamar Stewart. Other than that, like I'm not super. I don't think it's going to make them good. I still worry that they're going to miss the playoffs next year. So I'd give them a C. I'm like I don't think they've done enough for me to be confident in what they've done.
Yeah, and it will be like, okay, now if Shamar Stewart is good and we trade Trey Hendrickson, how much do you get back now from that trade that you can use to help yourself on the defense this year? Because if you can get enough back where maybe Shamar Stewart isn't as good as someone as Trey Hendrickson, like no one thinks he is going to be that good, and then you're able to trade him for like equal talent, you don't have to pay him, so you have more money to spend and trade for other pieces. Like it feels like that could be a case where like, okay, now I could see potentially the Bengals having a much better year defensively.
I hope so. I mean, good God, last year the fact that their defense was just so abysmal, the fact that we missed out on them being in the playoffs instead of the Steelers, like it was a tragedy that I've finally recovered, but it took me several months to do so.
Yeah. No, it took several months. And then after that, it's taken several decades for the Cleveland Browns to almost recover. They're almost there. And then it's like when you lose your virginity, you're like, oh, I can't wait for this to go on forever. And then they break up with you the next day. And then that's what happened with the Cleveland Browns and Baker Mayfield. And then they go after Deshaun Watson. It's like the Browns have reached the top of the mountain. Now they're going to be good. Like the Lions reached it, the Bills did, and then they were good for a couple of years. The Cleveland Browns like got to the top of the hill, immediately tumbled all the way back down it, and then in this draft, they go out there, take a defensive tackle in the first round, Mason Graham out of Michigan. Then you get in the second round, you have two picks, linebacker Carson Schweising out of UCLA, and
Does
then you
not
get
pass the name
running back
test.
Quinshawn Judkins, kind of passed the name test out of
Maybe.
Ohio State. So you need a running back, get another guy from Ohio there. So I feel like that's a really good pickup. And then you get a tight end, Harold Fannin. You pick up a QB in the third round, Dylan Gabriel. Then you also have Dylan Sampson. And then you pick Shador Sanders, who was the main storyline for this draft because a lot of people, if you only listen to what the media say and you don't actually pay attention to the draft, everyone was like, well, it's a toss up between Cam Ward and Shador. Obviously, Cam Ward is better than everything than Shador Sanders, and he does everything better. He's more athletic, has a bigger arm, maybe has more to prove at this point. But Shador Sanders ends up falling all the way down to number 5. And then, if you want to take a chance on a Super Bowl MVP grandfather, a rapist, and a streamer, they all walk into a bar. You'd say, what bar is this? You're like, it's not a bar, it's the Cleveland Browns quarterback room.
Yeah, no kidding, dude. Oh my god. My what I don't understand about the draft, like Mason Graham, okay, you trade down from number 2, you let the Jags take Travis Hunter, you pass up on him, you get Mason Graham. Okay, I'm fine with that. What I don't understand is why did you take Shador Sanders in the 5th round when you also took another quarterback in round 3? Because Shador Sanders was supposed to go in the 1st round. I think a lot of scouts kind of saw him as more of a 2nd round talent, so wasn't surprised when he fell out of the 1st round. But you're in the 3rd round, you need a quarterback, and according to your evaluators, and Kevin Stefanski is a coach of the year, he's won coach of the year multiple times, so I respect his judgment there. They've been good at drafting. You pick Dylan Gabriel over Shador Sanders, which is fine. That's what you want to do. Why in the 5th round, though, after Shador has fallen, do you decide to take him again? You've proven to me at this point, after taking Dylan Gabriel over him, that you evaluate Dylan Gabriel higher than Shador Sanders. So then you take him in the 5th round, and they look like there's like a dead animal in the room when they draft Shador Sanders, as if the owner demands them to draft Shador, which, if that's the case, that's sad, unfortunately. But this monumental draft disaster that was for Shador Sanders. On the surface, you're like, wait, what does the NFL have against Shador Sanders? I think the real question is, what does Shador Sanders have against bad quarterback teams? Here's the thing. Like, if you're a quarterback, you don't want to play for the Bills or the Chiefs or these other teams because they already have their guy. The teams that are going to need your talent are going to be teams like the Jets and the Browns and the Titans and teams like this. Obviously, their situation is not great. You need to elevate them. When you're in draft interviews with teams like the Giants and you don't prepare and you basically say, like, when people ask questions about doubting your talents and you just basically say, like maybe I'm not your guy, like, they're not going to want you. Like, he had one of the worst job interviews from based on reports you could possibly have in the NFL. You have the nepotism with Shador Sanders, with Deion Sanders, and you have like one of the first NIL superstars of college football there with massive egos. Like, if I'm trying to build a team, like, I'm nervous to draft Shador Sanders, no matter how talented he could be. I'm not surprised he fell in the draft. I am surprised he fell as hard as he did, but it sounds like Shador Sanders did it to himself ultimately, which I feel like when I watch the sports talk radio shows, like, doesn't seem like they're telling the full story on why he fell the way he did.
Yeah, no, and I know Post Malone wrote the song about the Kansas City Chiefs. When he wrote, I had some help, but maybe the NFL owners also had a play in it because they told him, we're not going to draft Shador until the 5th round. and I had no strong feelings about Shador Sanders. And I know there's been this whole weird rift in the media about Colorado. If you don't like Colorado, then you just don't like football. And then there's just so much drama about it when it's like, it's just college football. Like, it's not that deep. He turned around Colorado. And then Shador gets to the draft. A lot of people saying Cam Ward is definitely better. But, like, as soon as I start to see him fall, as like look into it, and then you have like the ESPN people who are immediately like, this is a race thing, the NFL is racist, and you're like, Cam Ward was taken number one. It's like, well, no, you just don't get the point. It's like, okay, I don't get the point that Shador Sanders has like a custom draft room, and then I see him streaming the whole time. And then it's not like the aura of Shador Sanders, it's the whole like, I'm not I don't want to like question anyone's faith. It's just like the whole like hashtag blessed Instagram era, like aura he gives me, especially with that. It feels very reality TV ish around his family, similar to the similar like to the Ball family, where it doesn't feel like it's all about football. It seems like it's more about money, and it's like, okay, like he is talented enough to be a really good college athlete, but like when you talk about the commitment to someone who's in like meetings with people in the draft, and then he's saying like, yeah, I don't care, like maybe I'm not the quarterback for you, like how dedicated is he going to be to work hard enough to like get it without his talent? Because that's the thing that always scares people about like nepo athletes, and then people in business who also come from nepotism. Like, you do still have some people who come from like parents athletes who are killers, but especially when your dad is as good as someone like Deion Sanders, like you typically don't see, even if they're a different position, the kid be better. Typically it's like the dad was a role player like Del Curry, or someone who's like a three at one point in their career, and then there's some becomes like an MVP in the league. But like for me, it's just like the more I like looked at it, the more I kind of just have questions like, how much is Shador really gonna care? Because like, but like it is still weird to me that before the draft, like the media was mentioning him as like the number two pick. So like for me, it seems like the media created a narrative so they could also create another narrative after the draft when they knew he was going to fall already. And then they could make it this whole big deal and then misdirect people, and it becomes this whole rage bait drama thing on the internet that they can use for clicks. Like, and this is just me looking as an objective outsider. Like, I'm not like anti Shador nor pro Shador. I haven't really gotten caught up in the drama with Colorado, but for me, it seems like from the outside looking in, the media just overhyped him, and then they're kind of just lying to people, and it kind of just was very reality TV built because his dad was such a star, and then in college for him, it was kind of a lot of screens, not the most athletic athlete.
Yeah, I think another thing that you could speculate as we're looking at ESPN in today's time, what did and you saying what you said just now made me think about another lens of it, like misdirecting people, maybe hyping up somebody that maybe shouldn't have been the second overall pick. Like Shador Sanders is obviously has the name recognition, but so did someone like Quinn Ewers. Like Quinn Ewers was still a well-known college quarterback entering the draft, but we just knew where he was going to fall. Part of me also questions like, okay, they recently got into ESPN gambling, and Shador Sanders at one point was like favorited to go number 2 overall to the Browns close to the draft approaching, and then ultimately the way he fell, like I think maybe that's something you could shout out there as well. But I think it has to do with his draft preparation, has to do with his attitude. You mentioned also like nepo babies. Where's Michael Jordan's son playing in the NBA? He's not playing in the NBA. Where is Wayne Gretzky's son playing? He's not playing in the NHL. And the list goes on. Like I don't think we're going to see Brady's son. We have LeBron James' son, and obviously he's not to the same pedigree as LeBron. So I think like especially when you're talking about someone like Deion Sanders, who's arguably the greatest corner of all time, two sport athlete phenomenon. Like I don't think Shador is ever going to live up to that expectation, and it's just unfortunately the narratives for players like that. but it has to do with a shitty attitude. It has to do with maybe being misguided by the draft. But I don't think it's as rage baiting or as racially charged for his drop as the other players, especially for the fact that who was the quarterback that went first overall? Cam Ward. What color skin is Cam Ward? Black. I don't think it has to do with race, ESPN.
Yeah, and I feel like, it has a little bit more, it like can have a little bit to do with that, with some of the antics, because I can get the race argument if someone's presenting it like, well, look at Johnny Manziel and Baker Mayfield, like they both had antics. It's just, were they as poor in interviews? So it's like we weren't at the interviews and we weren't there, but like how like antagonistic were Baker Mayfield and Johnny Manziel. But I can get I can understand someone coming from the perspective though, like, well, Johnny Manziel was like a partier. Everyone knew he kind of maybe wasn't going to pan out. Like Cleveland ended up taking all three of these quarterbacks that I'm using in this example, oddly enough, that all had issues coming
Poetically.
into the league. So maybe it's just a Cleveland thing. And maybe if Cleveland drafts a sign, it's a sign that they're going to fail. But like, I can understand the argument. It's like, well, those guys didn't get an issue. Maybe you could argue they kind of got a pass. Like, well, they're kind of just white frat bros where Shador can be looked at maybe in a different light in some people's eyes, and they've had different experiences than I have. But do I think that's the main reason? No. I feel like it has to do in tandem with your preparation, how you perform in interviews, and just overall how teams value you. Because I do think, like, at the end of the day, winning is a business in the NFL. So if he was this generational talent, I can't see like the league letting like someone like a Lamar Jackson fall down to the fifth round. Like even Lamar was taken by the Ravens because of his talent in the second round, but you can't just go out there and be openly disrespectful to someone else who has an ego. And they're like, okay, that's not a sign that you're gonna necessarily succeed in the NFL. If you go to a job interview and then they're like, why should you hire me? And they're like, oh, if you don't want to hire me, that's just up to you. And then you go back to them like, hey, man, I got like all these people who passed on me. I kind of need a job. Well, you just said why, like, we shouldn't hire you. Like, why are you coming back to us asking us for a job? And like the only reason Cleveland probably drafted him is he probably just didn't meet with Cleveland. Because and then Deion Sanders even has a tweet where he's like, that came up and was recirculating like, oh well, if I was a team, I wouldn't go to Cleveland. I would pull a Eli Manning and ask for a trade. And then Shador didn't even end up having the leverage to do that. And the NFL's like, you think you're gonna pull a Eli Manning? Like, no, that's not gonna happen.
No. No, it's a fascinating story. I'm curious to see how the reports will come out slowly but surely with the Sanders thing. Um, I do want to talk about just how the draft panned out. We'll go through like the quick picks and then just some of the player like main stars and where they fell. Cam Ward went to Tennessee. He was the number one quarterback prospect. Makes sense. That's who we expected. Jags trade up for Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is going to go to Jacksonville. They swap with the Browns. When Travis Hunter went to the Jags, what did you think of that?
They need him to play both positions. Like, good.
Yeah.
Like, if he wants to play both positions, the Jaguars are the only team that really need him to play both positions. So if there's any player who wants to do it, and if there's any team that's like, we might as well try it. I mean, we got nothing else to lose because Trevor sucks. This state sucks. The weather here sucks here. It's humid, it's hot, it's raining all the time. There's nothing but old people. We don't have fans. Our owner is a Muppet Smurf from Mario who spawned here and decided to buy a football team. And, he's simply terrible at it. So if you want to go out there and be the first corner wide receiver, be my guest. And, he's going to be a generational talent. And if he lives up to the hype at either side of the football, like, good for the Jaguars. Like, you needed a corner and a receiver. You got both. We'll see if he plays in both positions. I don't think he will, but it'll be interesting to see if we actually have a player try and leverage retiring if he doesn't play both positions. My only like thing with that is like just the attrition. Like I don't think you're gonna make it through a 16 game season, but that's just me.
Yeah, I feel like I agree. I'd like to see him play both positions, and I feel like Jacksonville, with them needing to fill the seats, with them needing help on both sides, like I think we're going to see that there. But I just don't see him playing every snap on both sides of the ball, because we see players play all snaps on one side of the ball, and their career gets short. Like it's just not realistic. But Travis Hunter is a special dude, so I'm excited. I'm happy he went to Jacksonville because I think it just kind of made sense. Like once when it happened, I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. Him going to Jacksonville. Um, Abdul Carter goes to the Giants. This guy is probably the best prospect in the draft. They're comparing him to players like Miles Garrett, but he was an absolute monster for Penn State. They pair him. I think what excites me about this pick, and honestly, I think the Giants had a pretty underrated draft. They pair him with Kayvon Thibodeau and um,
Brian
Brian
Burns.
Burns. Like
It's
if this,
scary.
I don't think it's if. I think it's when he pans out. I think Abdul Carter is going to be a freak for the Giants. Now, if they can just get their quarterback, which I guess might as well talk about Jackson Dart because they traded up for Jackson Dart in the first round, a guy that does not know how to do a snap count. And
Really?
when he played against top quarterbacks in this draft, like when he played against top teams, he melted down. So I don't feel confident in Jackson Dart as a pro starter, especially him like going into the gauntlet. But um, yeah, Jackson Dart, like he doesn't even pass. He doesn't pass the name test. It just felt like Daniel Jones part two.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with Jackson Dart, he's really just going to be a milestone for everyone realizing, oh shit, Shador's really fucked in this draft. Because it was once the Giants didn't take him, it's like, okay, the Steelers are going to take him, right? And then they're like, no, Shador really doesn't fit our timeline with Aaron Rodgers. It's like, what do you mean? It'd be perfect. He can sit for 2 or 3 years and then play, just like Jordan Love did. But no, they didn't want to do that. But yeah, with Jackson Dart, for me, what I think of with him is just that's the moment people realize, like, oh, Shador is not getting drafted by anyone in the first round
No.
here, especially if the Giants are going to do it. And then, if you're going to draft someone like Jackson Dart, you know what you should get him? Someone like Cam Scatabo, and they get the real Cam Scatabo, where the real Cam Scatabo, please stand up in New York
Yes.
with the Giants. But you have a really interesting QB room because Jackson Dart doesn't have to play, so you'll still at least have an interesting team with Russ, Jameis, and Jackson Dart. So it'll kind of be like, can you beat out Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson? And I feel like that's a really good test for a quarterback there. So good luck to the
Yeah.
Giants, and I thought that was a interesting trade there.
I was a little bummed that Cam Scottigo went to the Giants, but the Giants now with him, Malik Neighbors, and potentially like with Jamison Russ, like that offense should be interesting. Cam Scatabo is going to be a beast in the NFL. It's a given. He strikes me as like someone that could be like a James Conner slash like Danny Woodhead type of player. So they got a value. I think he fell to the fourth round. Like Cam Scatabo is going to be great. So I like what they did there for the Giants. Those three picks, I'm happy with.
Yeah,
Patriots get Will Campbell. He's an offensive tackle, so we don't know. And do we care? I'm not sure. Patriots
yeah.
did get a running back as well, Tavion Henderson. That could be interesting for them. But offensive tackle, woo, exciting.
We knew it too. Everyone was like, "Oh, who will the Patriots pick?" And we're like, "A tackle," because it's New
It's a
England,
tackle.
and they just spent a ton of money, like on offense. It felt like their biggest hole kind of was tackle at this point. So I was like, "Yeah, it's a good excuse to draft a tackle," but no real receiver activity there. But maybe they're just giving up.
Yeah. I'm going to skip the fifth pick because we talked about Mason Graham. Ashton Genty went to the Raiders. So now we have Geno Smith, Ashton Genty, and Brock Bowers on that offense, corralled by Pete Carroll.
Yeah, that's gonna be a wild offense, and then it's so unfortunate though because imagine this offense with someone like Josh Allen where he has a running back like Ashton Jinty, Brock Bowers at tight end here. But no, it's going to be helmed by Geno Smith. And they took a quarterback in this draft, so we'll see if they play at all or if they pan out and it's a quarterback who can actually do anything in the future. But now you have a team that it's not looking like they're going to successfully tank for Arch Manning, and they're going to successfully go out there and win 7 games in back-to-back seasons. Now their ceiling, I feel like their floor now with Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers is probably 5 games. You're not getting the number 1 pick next year and drafting Arch Manning with a 5 game window, and then you sign Geno Smith. Like, this is kind of, I don't know, like, this is kind of getting worse than I thought. I don't think they're going to be able to get their quarterback.
No, I don't think so either. At least with Gino, they'll have a solid quarterback for the least like the next 2 or 3 years. Maybe they build up their defense in the meantime, but I like Ashton Genty's just one of those guys, especially if you're a team like the Raiders, who your running back last year was Areem Abdullah. Like, they needed to get a running back, and Ashton Genty, with what he can be, like, I think it's going to be a great fit. Um, they're comparing him to like a Jameer Gibbs, so I see him being successful there. But I think it's interesting. I think they could still trade for a quarterback next year. It feels like they kind of punted on quarterback this year, but they just have um, Geno Smith as kind of like what they used Gardner Minshew for the following year.
Yeah, because they picked up some good defenders in this draft as well. So, like, with the Raiders, you could probably kind of look at it with them. Like, we're trying to draft as many really good skilled players as possible, and then we'll trade like Geno Smith and a couple first round picks, or as many as it takes to get to the first round pick, the first overall pick next year, to get someone like Arch or another quarterback.
hmm And then we had these 6 picks in a row that everyone were like, "Yep, this is a good pick." And of course, it's the Jets that break up what the name test is. I think the name test, it's not an exact art, but I do think that it's a real thing. Armand Miabu as the 7th overall pick. We've gone over drafts, multiple drafts, where you just know by the name that they're not going to succeed. I don't know Armand personally, but I believe that if we're looking at the top 10 picks, my suspicion, him being drafted by the Jets and him being an offensive lineman at a position that's very hard to hit on, um, name test Jets and an offensive lineman, that is the holy trinity of potentially a bust.
Yeah, no, you like told me like, oh, this guy is gonna be a bust, and then told me his name, like, oh, who drafted him, the Jets, like, as a
Yep.
joke, and then you're like, yep. Like, if
Yep.
you're a student of the game, and like, that's what I was like talking about the NBA earlier. Sometimes it's not just hard that to predict these things. Like, you have to pay attention. Like, like, we can't all just not get just one round wrong in the first round, but like, feel like this guy, and then the fact that Aaron Glenn in his press conferences and after that Aaron Rodgers story is worrying me. He's just like, I'm just glad this guy is on my football team. Like, they asked him some question like, what what were your thoughts on the Aaron Rodgers video? And he's like, I'm glad Dufako Niabi is on my team now. And you're like, what? Like, and he's like ignoring the question, and then he's just throwing out the name of the guy who's gonna ruin the first string of picks in the first round, probably be a bust because he's on the Jets. And then it's like, just kind of like, you don't even address the question at all, or say like, I'm not talking about that. You're just like, I love this guy on my team, and like, kind of concerning with the Jets. And it kind of just feels like it's gonna be an even worse disaster than it was. It's like the Jets honestly feel like a third world country at this point.
They are. And New Jersey is a third world country, so it makes perfect sense. But I believe that they whiffed on their draft here. Um, Looking at the rest of the first round, I mean, ultimately, the Saints also took an offensive lineman. The Saints are also trying to suck, so it makes a lot of sense. Um, so that rounds up the top 10. Outside of that, the first round, a notable player that I'm going to shout out because I feel confident that he's going to succeed just based on who drafted them. The Chargers drafted Amorion Hampton, who was outside of Ashton Genty, the top running back. Just like with the Jets and offensive linemen and knowing that they're going to suck, the Chargers' string of successfully drafting running backs with LT to Darren Sproles, from Darren Sproles to Melvin Gordon, from Melvin Gordon to Austin Eckler, now Austin Eckler to Amorion Hampton. I think this guy is going to be a beast right away. And they had Najee, so I think the Chargers run game moving forward next year is actually going to be really good. And I think this guy is going to be great. You heard it here
Yeah, no,
first.
yeah, especially because you let J.K. Dobbins walk, and then you're like the Chargers are good at drafting running backs. Also, San Francisco was always good with Jim Harbaugh there as well. So I feel like the Chargers will be interesting. It's really going to be they don't just need another receiver besides just like one like main wide receiver. You can't just have a small white guy as your best receiver and expect to succeed in the playoffs. So for them, I feel like to win a Super Bowl, they'll need those two running backs, but you still need like two or three like elite wide receivers to really compete.
Yeah, I agree with that. Last pick I want to go over with you because I know you're a fan of this player and the team that he drafted with. Just like, you know, 25 years ago when we were looking at pick 199, all the players, all the 198 picks that were taken before him, this draft will be defined by pick 231 and the 230 players that were picked before him. Quinn Ewers gets drafted by the Dolphins.
I
I actually
mean,
saw this and I'm like, actually a great fit. I actually love that Quinn Ewers went to the Dolphins because the thing is I think Quinn Ewers, like, he played pretty well. Last year he played terribly, but historically, like, he was going to be a top 10 pick, but then he just played himself out of a job this entire
I mean,
past year, but played well in the playoffs, at least against Arizona State. But he goes to the Dolphins, seventh round pick. We saw another seventh round pick from the Dolphins play in a playoff game, aka Skylar Thompson. So is it crazy to me to think that a team that their quarterback is made of glass is going to be we're not going to see Quinn Ewers next year? Like, we're going to see Quinn Ewers and hopefully he's great for the Dolphins.
yeah, and no, because I heard that pick, and I think he's gonna play. And you're not telling me Quinn Ewers can be like Brock Purdy for the Miami Dolphins. And if you're a quarterback coming into the league, what you want is to go to a really good team who has a bad quarterback, so you have a chance to sit, learn behind them, and then come in later in the season. He's gonna be able to sit behind Tua. He's guaranteed to play. Unless Tua sees him as a threat and suddenly Tua magically can play an entire season for the Miami Dolphins, which could happen because Tua is going to be coming into a contract year and is going to need to get paid. So this is kind of the perfect storm for Miami to also motivate too. It's like, we just gave you a massive contract. You need to perform here. And then you also need to stay healthy for a full season. And then Quinn is also going to be like, well, I have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. This team falls off a cliff anytime Tua gets hurt. So if I can even elevate this team because I'll have the ability to push the ball further down the field, get more airtime under it so Tyreek and Jalen Waddle can really get down the field and allow their routes to develop. And he's a little bit more he's not necessarily more athletic, but he can move better in the pocket than Tua can. So I feel like this is going to be a good pick. And this was a guy before he got injured was supposed to be at the top of the draft this year. And if you're a college athlete, you get injured, you can definitely fall off. And well, he wasn't, the best quarterback coming out of the draft. He wasn't Cam Ward. He was projected before the season to be a really high draft pick. So I could definitely see him maybe being similar to someone like Brock Purdy, or on the high end, similar to kind of Justin Herbert when he came out of Oregon.
Yeah. I think he's going to be good and I like that he went to the Dolphins. This draft, I'm really interested how it's going to age. I feel like the last several drafts it's all been quarterbacks with the exception of the Kenny Pickett draft. This draft, it seems like the focal point is going to be running backs seem to be a strong position and heavily a defensive draft. So it'll be interesting how it ages, but we'll do a redraft of this in the next year or so, see how it pans out. But the NFL draft is upon us. We now look to the schedule release, which comes out in 2 weeks. We see where the schedule aligns, who plays who when, and that is pure cinema when that occurs.
Yeah, no, the schedule releases some of my favorite things to go through, break down some of my favorite content. And then just now, the Timberwolves have officially eliminated the Los Angeles Lakers from the playoffs. Mike Conley hitting the three to seal it, and then Rudy Gobert becoming the second player in Timberwolves history to have a 20 and 20 game. Only other player to do that, you guessed it, Kevin Garnett.
Oh my God. I'm looking at his stats 27, 24. Jesus. All right. Well, Rudy Gobert, I respect the grind because we've we criticize Rudy Gobert a lot on the show. I think for good reason for some points, but closeout game 27 and 24, shoots 12 of 15 in 40 minutes. Like, all
I've
right,
always
Rudy Gobert.
said if he could make a layup, the guy would average like 25 in his sleep. And then also, this is a game too where JJ Redick decided to go small and he started Dorian Finney Smith. And to start the game, they started just doing little rim runs to Rudy Gobert. And anytime they needed a bucket, that's what they would do. And then Julius Randle was being mostly guarded by LeBron in this game and kind of able to get his little fadeaway off. And like Julius Randle was never bothered in this series because LeBron can't bother anyone defensively. Rory Hachimura is the best like matchup for him, but like yeah, it's an interesting
Yeah.
series.
Yeah. I did not think the Lakers were going to fall in five, but now that it's over, the Lakers have to get not one, multiple big men. You could not be going up against the Timberwolves, or better yet, the Nuggets, or better yet, the Thunder in the future, and using Dorian Finney Smith as your big man.
The
Just not going
Rockets,
to work.
Alperen Sangoon,
Yeah, like Sangoon, Joker,
Wemby.
Wemby. Yeah, Wemby. The Spurs will be in the playoffs very soon. And then this series, like Rudy Gobert, I'm not going to discredit this game because he played phenomenally, but that is not. We're not going to see that same Rudy Gobert against the Warriors, or against the
No,
Thunder, or against the Nuggets. Just not going to
yeah,
happen.
because the Thunder can play Steven Adams and Sangoon if they match up with the Timberwolves, and then they have the wing defenders to really bother them. So I feel like the Rockets could also be a interesting matchup. So I feel like the Timberwolves would beat the Rockets, but I feel like that series definitely would go seven because they have the
Absolutely,
size to compete.
for sure. Good for the Timberwolves though. Lakers. We'll see you next year.
And then while you were recovering, did you happen to watch anything worth sharing this week?
I didn't watch anything, but I did listen to something because next week I have the weekend concert. So I'll be at the weekend concert. When I was on the plane, I was re-exploring his catalog and I listened to the trilogy series because the way he ended his career, he started off with his trilogy series, which like that's where you hear like Wicked Games and like some of his big early hits. And then he ended with After Hours, Dawn of Femme, and then this new album is his last. So I listened to his trilogy album, and I feel like, especially now that the weekend has become like pop royalty and he's become so massive, you kind of forget like his origins. You listen to Trilogy, it's a lot more of like a darker, moodier hip hop, or not hip hop, but more like R&B sound. So listen back, listen to House of Balloons, Thursday, and Echoes of Silence. If you're into R&B and B and you're into like moody pop music, I feel like you would appreciate the Weeknd's trilogy.
Yeah, even is that the album with "Can't Feel My Face" on, or is that before it?
It's before. It's like his it's what it's basically what got him signed. Those all those albums were ended up picking up when he signed with OVO. But it's like his first projects. The first hits you would know from that are like Wicked Games, The Morning. Those are like the big hits that came from that.
Got it. Yeah, because I know like even like 2015, like Beauty Behind the Madness, like some of the deeper cuts in that album, you definitely got like some of the darker stuff from him, and then even Starboy like has a little bit of it, and then I feel like he just moved into like more of like a synthy sound, which is I feel like you just evolve as an artist, so like he sounds more popular, but I feel like for him it was a natural progression.
Yeah. And now he's going into acting. So I'm gonna see the weekend on Friday, this upcoming weekend. Um, and then the following week, he has the movie that comes out, so I'll see the movie. So it's It's going to be an EXO May, so that'll be exciting. But what have you been watching ultimately or listening to?
Yeah, so I rewatched the first accountant movie. Because I need to watch the accountant too, especially in the series. I feel like in the spirit of the Boston Celtics with Joe Mazzulla, and I had watched it when it had first came out, but hadn't gone back to it. But it's definitely a really good movie. I like kind of forgot the cast, but it has J.K. Simmons in it. Ben Affleck is in it. They also had Anna Kendrick, who I totally like had forgot was in the movie, and then also John Bernthal was in the movie as well. My The one thing I'm like confused about is I could have just like not been paying attention and missed this part, but essentially they get hired to investigate a crime, and then once Ben Affleck's character solves the crime, the company's like, "Oh, we're going so and so died, we're going bankrupt, like you need to stop this and discontinue your work." And then the company starts to kill everyone who like knew about the crime or that it happened. So it's like if you didn't hire him to figure it out, no one would have ever known about it. You could have just killed the other person at the company who was working on it. Wouldn't have been an issue, but you get someone who's like a highly trained killer and someone who's so good with numbers that he ended up figuring it out in a night, and then after that you're just doing like cleanup work. Like it just kind of like was a plot hole that like didn't make sense to me, but like overall like it's a satisfying movie.
Yeah, I got to check this out because I see that it came out like,
2016.
well, the first account, yeah, and then the newest one just came out this past weekend, and it looks like
Yeah.
they're gonna make a third one. So it looks like it might be just like a trilogy potentially. But I remember this was pretty massive when it came out. It was at least extra. I'm trying to remember, was this directed by Ben Affleck or was he just like a producer on it, or was he even attached to the production at all?
I'm not sure if he was attached to the production on this one. Because I know, like Ben Affleck did like have a really good run, directing movies. I'm not sure if he did The Accountant,
It looks like he didn't in this case. I just looked it up, but
but I feel like where like the movie thrives though is just like anything John Bernthal is in, I'll watch. Like when he was in Baby Driver, he like just comes in, kind of just chews up the scenery, and then he kind of just pops anytime he's on screen. Same thing with Ben Affleck. So it looks like the second movie, what I'm hoping is it looks like they're focusing on their dynamic a lot more, as brothers. Because in the first movie, like John Bernthal's character's in it a little bit, but it's definitely more reserved. He's like more of a side character, so you see him maybe like 10% of the movie.
okay. Yeah, I'm interested in it. I'm looking at his Ben Affleck. It looks like he's a producer for the accountant too. So he'll have some say, and I feel like he's got a good track record with that. So is the accountant on Netflix? The original one?
It's on Max.
Okay, so I'll have to check that out now that it's out. Especially, I feel like for the Celtics, like Joe Mazzulla, in honor of him, like
Yeah.
we got to shout it out.
Another Ben Affleck movie, The Town, and now it's gonna be The Accountant too. Anytime they have an off day, and then shout out to the Knicks. I'm sure Joe Mazzulla is gonna thank the Knicks for losing, and extending that series because he said every off day they have, he's gonna watch The Accountant too. So he just gave Joe Mazzulla like 6 extra days to watch The Accountant.
Hey, whatever works, right? I can't hate him for it.
Yeah.
But we talked about the NFL draft, how everything shook down there. Talked about the current state of the NBA playoffs. Moving on to the second round, we'll be talking about our predictions for the second round next week and all things basketball, football, and Brickyard related. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be back here next Wednesday to cover all of our bases. Message that we like to show before the end of every episode. You already know the message here. Say it with me here. Stay brick.
Stay brick.